Just a moment. Five. Will adjusted the shade for the millionth time, trying to block the sun that sat low over the road, bellowing anger. It's so hot, he looked at Elliot. Elliot didn't care. Elliot had been near silence since Minneapolis when Will accused him of being the same old wolf. He presumed Elliot was stewing, although of course Will would never know, because Elliot was as readable as a brick. The car jolted over a pothole. They were taking the back way to Broken Hill, riding in a ridiculous purple Valiant, wide and loud, easily 30 years old. No air, of course. Many years ago the dash had split under the merciless pounding of the sun and began to ooze yellow foam. The speedometer read in miles. It was a miracle it had seat belts. They were probably getting 3 miles to the gallon. He watched leafless trees drift by. After 8 hours in an oven made of metal and glass, heat had penetrated every pore of his body. He just wanted to get out of the car. He wanted Elliot to say something. Have you been out here before? No reply. Will looked out at the baked earth that rolled all the way to the horizon, flat as a plate. Will, had been out here before. He had lived in Broken Hill. Apparently, he didn't remember. It was hard to believe he could have forgotten this heat. Yes, Elliot, said Elliot. It took Will a moment to remember the question. Before or after? Elliot didn't respond. You know, before or after. Still nothing. Or both? He sighed and began to fiddle with the vents. Stop that. You're not making it better. Will looked at him. Leave the vents alone. He sat back. Elliot was definitely peed. A sign blew by the window, announcing a turnoff for Menandy. We should get some fuel. The intersection crawled toward them. Elliot, only 30 kilometers. Menandy. Elliot, do you know how far apart the gas stations are? Seriously, you run out of petrol on a road like this, you die. It happens. The intersection slid past. Will slouched. He understood that Elliot didn't want to stop. The airport had been hairy. They had made it through. They had made it through immigration. Then a short, dark-skinned official had emerged from nowhere, asking them to please step out of the line. Will had been deposited into a small, windowless room and left for 20 minutes, staring at a security camera. It would seem increasingly obvious to him they'd been recognized, but he wasn't sure what he should do about that, so he waited. Eventually the door opened. It was Elliot. People were arguing with the corridor, loud Australian voices. Are we okay? Will had asked. Elliot didn't say anything, but the answer was clearly no. They found a cab. He could hear rising police sirens, but then there had been nothing but a lot of uneventful driving. His eyes were closing, and then there was a flat bang, and the car lurched. What? He said, thinking pursuit. Death. Elliot steered the car onto the shoulder. Dust billowed. A flat, said Elliot. He popped open the door. Will sat for a moment before remembering the promise of fresh air and heaving himself from the seat. His knees popped violently. The air was like fire, but at least it was moving. He strode around the car, swinging his arms. Oh, yeah, he said. It felt good to do something. Elliot dragged a spare tire from the trunk. Will shielded his eyes to study the landscape. There was nothing, just a vast canyon of air. His eyes grew restless for something to latch onto. He heard Elliot grunting. Need a hand? Elliot glanced at him, his face flushed. They're rusted on. The lug nuts? Doesn't matter, we can drive on it. Elliot stood. Did you pull hard enough? Yes, said Elliot. I pulled hard enough. Give me a try. Elliot rolled the tire back to the trunk. Forget it. For F's sake, I'm not useless. This isn't one of those games where everybody gets a turn. Get in the car. I will be 2 effing minutes. Get in the car. No. Elliot looked at him expressionlessly. Fine. He tossed Will the wrench. Will pulled off his t-shirt and knelt before the jacked-up wheel. There was a lot of rust here. He wiggled the wrench on the top nut and tested it. Well, said Elliot. He swiped his arm across his forehead, just warming up. We have a time issue. You don't even think I can change a tire? He strained against the wrench. I can do this. Some time passed. Okay, Elliot said. Enough. I've almost got it. You haven't. You're just wasting time. He strained. Something went crack. You're going to strip it. The lug nut squealed. He forced it through a revolution, and then it got easy. He unscrewed the nut and dropped it onto the ground. He had a tremendous urge to glance at Elliot's face, but couldn't resist it. Congratulations, said Elliot. Unfortunately, there are 3 more. He braced his foot against the tire well. You want me to be useless. You love being in control of everything while I stumble around with no idea what I'm doing. Now that's the opposite of what I want. What I want is to get to Broken Hill as soon as possible and for you to make a net positive contribution to that goal. He released the wrench and bent to inspect the next lug nut. It looked very corroded. He hefted the wrench and began to bang at it. This is moved into farce, Elliot said. Get into the car. The lug nut spat rust. He got the wrench around it and forced it around. That's 2. Great, said Elliot. You need to loosen up, Will said. You seriously need to take a effing breath and consider that you're not the only guy who can do everything. Did you tell me to loosen up? He wiggled the wrench onto the 3rd nut. Is that funny for some reason? When I experience base physiological needs for food, water, air, sleep, and sex, I follow protocols in order to satisfy them without experiencing desire. Yes, it's funny. You effing what? It's required to maintain a defense against compromise. Desire is weakness. I'm sure I explained this. Well, that sounds awesome. That sounds like a terrific life you have there, Elliot. The nut loosened. Got you, he said. You want to see what happens when desire overpowers discipline? Get in the car. We'll be there in about 2 hours. And you didn't stop it. The final lug nut was so rusted that he had trouble getting the wrench around it. You and your protocols weren't good enough to save my town. He found traction and pulled. Watch me budge this lug nut despite my complete lack of discipline. His muscles burned. Sweat coursed down his back. Stop that. You're going to pull the whole car off the jack. And what about Bronte? 20 years and you never made a move, did you? I bet you never even held her hand. Get in the car. He grunted, but the nut was immovable. He released the wrench, panting. You know I'm right. You're not right, Elliot said. You've been wrong about everything you've opened your mouth to opine upon, up to and including your belief in your ability to change this tire. Get in the car. He repositioned his feet and gripped the wrench. I am budging this lug nut. He pulled with everything he had. His body shook. He yelled. The nut twisted, and with a squeal, he landed in the dust. He scrambled back to the tire. Yes, he brandished the nut. I was right. Elliot walked around the car and climbed into the driver's seat. Ha, said Will. He pulled at the tire and it slid off easily. He changed it, collected his shirt, and returned to the passenger's seat. Elliot started the engine. He didn't say anything. Neither did Will, because this time the silence was fine. I don't like that chopper, Elliot said. It was an hour later, maybe 2. It was hard to tell because nothing changed. They were driving on a strip of road that folded around on itself, trapped in an endless loop of blistered blacktop. Will leaned forward and peered through the windshield. A black speck hung in the sky ahead and to the right. That's a crop duster. They use helicopters for that out here. Where are the crops? A good point. The black speck grew. I don't know. Bag on the back seat. Get that. He twisted in his seat, found an old green-black gym bag, and dragged it into his lap. It clanked. Is this what I think it is? Yes. When did you get a gun? But he knew it was when Elliot had acquired the car. Will had emerged from a restroom to find a bearded guy showing Elliot something in the trunk. They had shaken hands. Then they had taken his Valiant. Take it out of the bag. I'm not going to shoot some crop-dusting farmer. I'm not asking you to shoot anyone. I'm asking you to be prepared. See those poles sticking out the sides? Those are for spraying crops. The helicopter drifted over the road and hovered there. The door popped open. Sun glinted on metal. Or maybe he's rue hunting, said Will. Elliot hit the gas. The roof barked out a flat impact. Hot air tickled Will's hair, and he looked up to see a small, neat blue hole. The hole was blue because of the sky. He turned and found a second hole in the back seat. The engine roared. Will saw the needle tip past 90 miles per hour. The road was cracked and potholes strewn with sand. One bump and they could roll. They could easily become airborne. The chopper flashed overhead, and Will glimpsed a grizzled man in a kubra with a rifle. When he turned, the chopper was rising in the rear window, peeling after them. "Okay," said Elliot. "Now I want you to shoot someone." Will pulled the shotgun from the bag. Brown plastic, molded around double barrels, the kind you had to break open between rounds. He hefted it awkwardly. Ammunition. Right. He found loose boxes of shells in the bag and tore one open. The car hit a pothole and began to slide. Shells spilled into the footwell. The car found traction, and Will steadied and broke open the shotgun and forced a shell into each barrel. He cranked the window. Furious wind blasted at his face. He stuck his head to see the chopper skimming low over the road behind them. The pilot was behind the plastic bubble, hands on the controls, and it seemed to Will that he wouldn't be able to steer and shoot simultaneously. He withdrew his head. "Is this guy a poet? Good question. I think he's just some guy," the car bounced. "They're controlling him, seems likely. So what do I do? Shoot him?" "What? No." "Yes," Elliot nodded, his eyes on the road. "Right now. He's not shooting, he's just chasing us. Still, shoot him." "He can't use the effing gun while he's flying, Elliot." "I realize. Shoot him." "Oh," said Will. "Oh!" He stuck his head out the window. The helicopter was running toward them, blades thundering. He raised the gun, but it was already too late. He fell back into the car. Elliot braked. The Valiant skidded, coming off the road. Dirt fountained. The world darkened. A rotor blade passed by, a great and terrible force Will felt in his bones. Everything became noise and dust, and then quiet. "Stay down," said Elliot after a while. Will looked at him. Elliot was unbuckling. "What?" "Don't move." He took the shotgun from Will's hands, opened the door, and disappeared. Will hunkered down. Time passed. There was a sharp bang and the louder, deeper boom of the shotgun. Will started to rise, stopped. The door opened. The shotgun came in, but first Will realized he was meant to take it. Elliot climbed inside and turned the key. He sat up. "Are you okay?" Elliot took the Valiant back to the road and steered around the helicopter, which no longer looked like an aircraft so much as a randomly distributed collection of scrap metal. There was no sign of the pilot. The car reached 65 and then 90 and then 110, a speed that made the windows howl like wolves and every pothole a bomb. The tires slipped and muttered, treacherous. Will didn't want to say anything, but the fourth time he thought he was going to die, he couldn't keep silent. "What are you doing?" Hurrying, Elliot's voice was odd. "What's the matter? A lot depends on you now." Elliot shook his head. What?" "In the future, when you need to shoot someone, do it." Okay. Elliot shook his head. This was a stupid idea. A stupid effing idea. Though through Elliot's side window, Will noticed a thin plume of dust. "Hey, another car out there." "You think I like shooting people?" "I don't. I do it because it needs to be done, understand?" "Yes." "Do you realize what happens if we fail? If there's no one left to stop them?" "No, you haven't told me." "This is ridiculous," said Elliot. Will looked out of the window. "That car's going really fast. It's trying to intercept us." "Is it? That's a surprise, is it? You didn't think there might be more? Why are you so peeved at me?" He stared at Elliot's shirt. There was a patch, a darker area. "Did you get shot?" He didn't reply. "Elliot, did you get shot?" "Yes." "We have to get you to... If you say something stupid, I'm going to pop you in your effing mouth." "Elliot," he said. "Elliot, I told you to shoot the guy." I'm sorry. Outside Elliot's window, the dust plume resolved into a police squad car. "What can I do? Next time you have to choose between Farmer Joe and the fate of the world. You can put a bullet into Farmer Joe, that's what you can do." "Okay." "You can kill Wolf. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Yeah," Elliot said. "Sure you can." The cop car rose in the side window. A sign ahead said Barrier Highway and stop, and clearly they were going to hit that cop car, Will saw. "Slow down," he said, but Elliot didn't. Instead, he dropped the handbrake and spun the wheel, and the Valiant began to slide sideways. It crossed the highway, passing in front of the cop car, chewed dirt for a while, and lurched onto the blacktop. Behind them, a siren began to wail. "Find out if that cop is a pro," Elliot said. "A what?" "A proselyte. Compromised. Find out if he wants to arrest us or kill us." "How do I do that?" How do you think with the gun? He wound down the window. The cop car was right there, nudging and whining like an animal in heat. He decided to shoot a tire, but the moment he got the shotgun out the window, the cop's car engine vented and distance opened between them. Will retreated inside. He didn't want to get shot. Not compromised, said Elliot. Good. Ahead Will saw Broken Hill 8, and no entry in quarantine zone and danger of death. Beyond that, on the horizon, twin sets of twinkling lights like early stars. Keep him back. How badly are you hurt? Badly. Elliot's eyes flicked to the rear mirror. Effing crap, Will, you F. He jerked around. The squad car had slipped lanes and was making a run up the driver's side. Will tumbled into the rear of the car. By the time he got upright, the cop car was alongside them. There was a soft thump of contact. The rear of the Valiant began to slide as if it were on ice. The world spun. Will lost his grip on the shotgun. The Valiant performed one complete revolution, and Elliot gunned the engine and it leaped forward again. He retrieved the shotgun. The cop car was moving up for a repeat performance, a second round of the Spin the Valiant, and there was no time to lower the window, so Will planted his feet on the side door, aimed the shotgun down his legs, and squeezed the trigger. Just a moment. I just have to change the lighting. Okay, that helps. He retrieved the shotgun. The cop car was moving up for a repeat performance, a second round of Spin the Valiant, and there was no time to lower the window, so Will planted his feet on the side door, aimed the shotgun down his legs, and squeezed the trigger. The window blew out. The cop car jerked as if stung, its engine jumping half a dozen octaves, and fell out of view. Will leaned out of the shattered window into the blast furnace of air. There were two cops in the squad car, their faces pinched with anxiety. He brought the shotgun around, settled on the radiator, and pulled the trigger. The car's hood popped open. It veered off the road, tires smoking. Will crawled back inside. When he reached his own seat, the lights ahead had resolved in two shining squad cars, one in each lane, barreling toward them. They're not kamikaze, are they? Elliot didn't answer. Will groped for his seat belt, but couldn't find it. Surely Elliot was about to swerve off the road. The cars ballooned in the windshield, slow slung and powerful. Elliot! Elliot! One squad car dropped behind the other. They flew past Elliot's window, the sirens Dopplering. Will breathed. Load that gun, Elliot said. He dug another around the footwell for shells, broke open the shotgun. They're coming around. Keep them back. I know. Don't talk about it. Do it. Where is it? Um, I am doing it. I just shot the cop car. Did you notice? Next time, shoot the driver. F, he said. What's the difference? You shoot the driver, no cop comes within 500 feet of us. That's the effing difference. You shoot the car. Okay, okay. He got his elbow out the passenger window and levered himself up. The wind tore at him. Way back, a column of white smoke rose from the car he'd shot, stark against the blue sky. Closer, the two new squad cars were eating up the distance between them. Will steadied the shotgun. He had hunted once. He had cleared land like this of rabbits and roos. When was that? He couldn't remember, but this feeling, the shotgun nestled in his shoulder, an endless landscape of pressed dirt spread before him, was familiar. He waited. The cops would surely see him and stay back. He did not want to shoot anyone. The Valiant coughed. The car shivered, lurched. Will clutched at the window frame to avoid falling out of it, almost dropping the gun. Hey, he shouted. What the F? Gas becoming an issue. Why are you shaking the car? To extract gas from the tank. I nearly fell out. Elliot had said something he couldn't hear over the roar of the wind. Will leaned inside. What? I said it's important to keep moving. I know that. Just give me 5 seconds of driving in a straight line. He pushed himself out of the window. The squad cars were closer than he liked. At this range, he'd pierce the windshield. They could see that, right? They could see he had a shotgun? He waited for them to back off. Shoot, Elliot yelled. He aimed at the car on the left and squeezed the trigger. Shot spattered across its hood. Its windshield cracked. Both cars' noses dipped to the blacktop. Smoke burst from their tires. He watched until there was a good couple hundred yards of road between them. Then he wriggled back inside. They're backed off. Good. Elliot didn't ask why he'd fired at the hood. Maybe he didn't realize. He probably assumed he was a terrible shot. He didn't know what Will had hunted. That is, that he remembered hunting. We seriously need to get you to a hospital. And how does that work? Said Elliot. How exactly do we get me to a hospital in this situation? I don't know, but you can't effing die, okay? It's not good for anyone to die. Hold on, said Elliot. Will saw a turnoff rushing toward them, a dusty blacktop guarded by red and black and yellow signs promising no entry. Road closed. Quarantine area. As they leaned around the corner, the car coughed explosively. Will felt a softness enter their momentum. The engine gargled. The Valiant lurched back onto the straight and muttered angrily. That's not good. No. He glanced behind. The squad cars had slipped into a single file. They followed at a distance, taking a turnoff with ease. They're going to just sit back there until we run out of gas. They're not. Let me float something, Will said. We stop, they arrest us, we get you some medical attention. Elliot didn't say anything. Then you talk us out. With the word voodoo. He leaned forward, searching the sky for choppers. Don't you think the priority here is you being okay? The bear word is the priority. Right, the bear word. He peered ahead. There's something on the road. A chain-link fence stretched away from the other side of the road, but whatever lay between was lost in the heat haze. Is that a gate? Just loose wire. Are you sure? Pretty sure. Are you really sure? He said, but by the time he got the words out, the answer was clear. It was a solid red and yellow barrier. The Valiant plowed through it, and a yellow block flew at Will's face and ricocheted off the windshield with a light boonk. He looked out of the rear window. Colorful blocks rolled slowly across the road. Plastic, said Elliot. You said it was wire. Last time I was here it was. The police cars were shrinking. Hey, they've stopped. That's because they believe what they've been told about Broken Hill. They don't want to die. So no one will follow us in here? We're safe? Regular people won't. Proles will. Oh, yeah, Will said, dismayed. Proles. Also, EIPs, said Elliot. You haven't seen those yet. When they show up, we need the word. He glanced in the rearview mirror. I'm going to pull over and let you drive for a while. The car coasted to a halt. Will ran around the vehicle, hunkering down in case of cops with sniper rifles or helicopters or whatever. He didn't know. It could be anything. The engine stuttered and he thought, please don't die. You COCK. He pulled open the driver's side door. Elliot was sitting in the passenger seat like he had been dropped there. One hand rested on his abdomen. His face was made of paper. The driver's seat was wet with blood. Holy crap, said Will. Get in. His butt pressed into the wet seat. The smell was rich and loamy, like a vegetable garden after rain. This is seriously bad, Elliot. He pulled the door closed and set the car to moving before it could capitulate. Is there a hospital in Broken Hill, a clinic at least? He glanced at him, abruptly fearful that he'd died in the past 5 seconds, but Elliot was still here. Maybe we can do something for you there. Maybe Elliot had medical knowledge. Maybe Elliot could dig a bullet out of his body and administer the correct doses of expired medicines. He'd stuck a needle into Will's eyeball. He must know something. The engine coughed 3 times. A structure rose in the distance. Something old and industrial. Are you listening? Yes, it's a good plan. Is it? But Elliot's expression suggested otherwise. Then what? We get the word. And? Elliot said nothing. What? He began and forced himself to stop peppering Elliot with questions. He should let Elliot concentrate on holding in his kidneys. A house came up on the right, a squat thing with sun-blistered paint, but he'd seen more run-down places in Portland. It didn't look abandoned. It was the windows, he realized. They were intact. And there were no weeds, no overgrowth. The sun sterilized everything. He spotted gray-white clumps scattered here and there and thought, anthills? One was on the road, more distinct. He swerved. Elliot grunted. Skeletons, he said. Of course there were skeletons, but still skeletons. On the road. A lone gas station came into view. A skeleton hung halfway out of a burnt-out station wagon. He glanced at Elliot to see if Elliot was getting this, and was at least a fraction as freaked out as he was, but Elliot's eyes were closed. Elliot! His eyes opened. He began to shift himself up the seat like he was arranging something heavy. Don't! Let me. Close my eyes. That's why I said something. He slowed. There were more skeletons here, and he didn't want to drive over them. He didn't want to hear the noise. The industrial structure he'd seen earlier was identifiable as a refinery, crouched above the town like a wrecked spaceship, like it had descended to Earth and murdered everybody. That he could believe, a death ray, a creeping light that spread through the town, disintegrating people. He could understand how something like that could wipe out a town. Not a word. Elliot! Elliot opened his eyes. We're almost there. The street signs shone. Wind-scrubbed, sulphide street, open-cut mine. Number 3. It was like they'd wanted to be the site of a toxic catastrophe, except that hadn't happened. That was just a story. Something tugged at him inside his mind, some memory. Where's your word? Hospital, Elliot said. He glanced at him. You want the hospital now? Word is in hospital, emergency room. How do you know that? Just do, Elliot said. He slowed further, because the road was littered with bones now. There was really no option. And he drove over a gray lump, with a sound like splintering tree branches, and winced. He saw a library with its steps converted to a ramp by a year and a half of wind-blown sand. It was hard to believe the skeletons were people. He knew but didn't. He peered ahead for signs to a hospital. On the right, a fire truck sat embedded in a storefront. Whatever happened out there hadn't happened quickly. People had had time to flee. Or try. He rolled the car up and down blocks. Some of the skeletons had things. He didn't want to notice this, but it was unavoidable. Flesh rotted, but things didn't. He caught glints of light from rings and finger bones, and belt buckles, and gold hoops, bracelets, and earrings. He saw a skull on the sidewalk, a small one. He didn't want to be here. The feeling rose very suddenly from somewhere primal. He saw a cafe and a real estate office, both of which felt familiar in a far-off, muddied way. He convinced himself to stop avoiding Oxide Street and rolled the Valiant over the thicket of bone. The car was near death, like Elliot, like himself. They were all very definitely close to death at the moment. It was all on sides. It was on all sides. He saw a blue sign with a white cross. Elliot, I found it. Stay with me. The street was a snarl of vehicles, which he threaded the Valiant through. The damage here was worse, every window broken, the bones like snow. Whatever kind of building had been across the road from the hospital was a charred ruin, and this was increasingly the case further down the street. Maybe half of the little business district had burned. You say the word is in the emergency room, right? He was. He didn't need Elliot to tell him that. He was just trying to keep talking. He saw a sign for emergency and squeezed the Valiant between 2 burned-out pickups. A white paramedic van lay sprayed across the curb. Beyond it, he could see wide glass double doors and a red sign. He yanked on the handbrake. Before he could euthanize the car, it burbled and died. Elliot, we're here. Elliot's head bobbled. Good. You want me to help you inside? He shook his head. I forgot. You have to stay here. I'll go look for the word. Don't tell you anything about it? Got it. Elliot nodded. He had been forced to take Will's advice. He had loosened up. He had relaxed control. Elliot was no longer in charge. "I'll be right back," Will climbed out. He wasn't prepared for the silence. He shut the car door and the sound evaporated. His shoes crunched sand. Hot air closed around him like a fist. He circumnavigated the paramedic van. The glass emergency room doors were a strange kind of black, not painted, stained. He slowed without knowing why. Well, he did know. It was because he was not incredibly keen to face whatever had reduced 3,000 human beings to belt buckles and bones. The paramedic van's rear doors were open. He glanced inside. A flatbed trolley, cloth straps, equipment, little bottles, nothing he wouldn't expect, but it made his brain crawl. He felt another tickle of familiarity. He hesitated, thinking, Elliot could benefit from some of these supplies. He could use some water. Will climbed into the van. He gathered anything that looked medicinal and returned to the valley with his arms full of supplies. Elliot's eyes were closed. "Elliot!" His eyes snapped open. "Stay awake!" He dumped the load of bottles into Elliot's lap. "I got this stuff for you," Elliot started. "Some medicine and water. You should drink the water." "What? You know, I think you're right. I did live here. It's starting to feel familiar." "The F?" said Elliot. "Word. I haven't gone in yet. I thought you could use this stuff." Elliot's eyes bulged. "All right, I'm going." He walked back to the emergency room. He got close to see shapes against the dark glass. He knew what they were. There had to be 2 or 3 dozen corpses jammed up against the glass, and they were just the ones he could see. He wondered if it was all right in there. The air could be toxic. It could actually kill him. He jogged back to the car. "F," said Elliot. "Hang on a second," Will said. "I just want to ask this. Are we sure we want to open this box? Because what's inside, it killed a lot of people. We are talking about something incredibly dangerous. It's striking me as kind of stupid to walk on in there and try and pick it up. That seems like a big risk, You say I'm immune, but do you know that for sure? What if I just avoided it somehow the last time? I lay in a ditch and it passed over my head. I'm just saying that emergency room. It's wall-to-wall dead people, Elliot. It's wall-to-wall, and there's, I don't know, something about a room full of corpses that makes me think about whether I want to go in there. Don't look at me like that. I know. He shook his head. I'll go in. I will. It's just, you're asking me to maybe die, Elliot. Give me a second. Give me one. I know you're hurting. I'm going, but I appreciate what I'm doing. That's all I want. I want you to acknowledge for 1 second the simple fact that I'm about to die, all right? I'm probably about to die, and I'm happy to do it. I'm going. I'm fine. I only wanted... He turned away. He walked. The glass was so dark, his feet scuffed. He reached the emergency room doors. His fingers touched the door plate. It was warm, like there was a beating heart inside. It wasn't that, it was just the sun. Everything here was warm. He looked back at the Valiant, but couldn't see it behind the paramedic van. "If I don't come out, Elliot," he shouted. "F you," his voice shook. He pushed open the door. 3 words. "And I, methinks, am gone astray in trackless waters and lone." Charlotte Bronte. Apostasy. From http://mediawatch.corporateoppression.com/community/tag/fox. Let me type that because um, let me type that. Okay. I'm typing it. Media Watch. This could bring up nothing. I don't know if it will or not. .corporate. Although, whatever it says, it would be here as well. So, That's at least a good thing. Corporate oppression. .com/community. Community/tags/ There we go. That does not appear to open anything. Let me see. I'll click it over here. See if it brings up anything at all. Weird. What is this? Oh, what on earth? Okay, never mind. I don't understand that. I'm just going to delete that. Let me delete that. I don't understand what I just did. Sorry. Never mind. Let me go on. I just think it's missing the point to get upset about bias in news or MSNBC or whoever. I see this all the time. I mentioned to someone that I watch FOX, and it's like I just slaughtered a baby. They ask, how can I watch that? It's just propaganda, etc., etc. I hate that he actually chose, like, to name drop them. I don't want to actually say that out loud. And they know this is not because they've ever sat down and spent any time with it, but because their favorite news channel, i.e. an FOX competitor, sometimes plays a clip from an FOX show, and it makes FOX look really stupid. Well, you know what? FOX does that too. If only I watched FOX. I think you must be really stupid watching that other show I see clips from on FOX sometimes. But I don't just watch FOX, because the way to beat biased reporting isn't to find the least biased one and put all your trust in that. See, I agree. I agree with this exactly, because I feel like you should vary your sources, and like you should vary what you watch. You shouldn't commit it to just one. You should be like, you should always double check any sort of resource you find on anything like that. And I don't like talking about that because I don't like talking about this kind of thing, but the fact that this is in here in this book, I mean, honestly, I just want to say I agree with this. I agree that people should watch everything. Watch it all and come to your conclusions from what you watch, but make sure you don't limit yourself to one thing, because you could get really tricked that way. Like, make sure you double check all the resources that are out there. Anyway, let me go on. Sorry. Because the way to beat biased reporting isn't to find the least biased one and put all your trust in that. First of all, they're all biased. From the language they use and the framing down to the choices they make about which stories to report, true. The gap between the most biased news show and the least is pretty small, all things considered. But more importantly, relying on a single source of information means you can't critically evaluate it. And I lost the book. I'm sorry, I gotta get it back again. Okay, here we go. But more importantly, relying on a single source of information means you can't critically evaluate it. It's like you're locked in a room, and every day I come in and tell you what's happening outside. It's very easy for me to make you believe whatever I want. Even if I don't lie, I can just tell you the facts that support me and leave out the ones that don't. Exactly. Exactly. I agree with this. That's what's happening if you're getting all your news from one place. If you stop listening to someone the second you hear a word or phrase you've been taught belongs to the enemy, like environment or job creators, that's what you're doing. You might be an intelligent person, but once you let someone else filter the world for you, you have no way to critically analyze what you're hearing. At best, absolute best case scenario, if they blatantly contradict themselves, you can spot that. But if they take basic care to maintain an internal logical consistency, which they all do, you've got nothing. You've delegated the ability to make up your mind. Exactly. Yeah, I agree with this. I know I shouldn't be like interjecting while reading this, but I have to agree with this. Now I'll continue. 1. By the way, we're in part 3 now of this of the book. She tried to catch Harry at inconvenient moments, when he was stepping into the shower or just after he closed his eyes at night or reaching for the car door, late for work. "Do you love me?" she would ask. She would smile, so he'd know she was teasing. "Maybe," he would say, or nothing. Sometimes the look he gave her was like, "Of course, why ask?" And other times it was more like, "Stop it, I'm running late." He did love her, she was sure of it. All evidence pointed to yes, so why not say it? This was the part that nagged at her. Yes, okay, in Harry's world, you didn't need to say something to make it real, but come on. She had said it. She had said it a lot, starting 3 weeks ago and increasing in frequency since, with the exception of a 4-day thought the week before, which she had hoped might trigger something but didn't, and it was driving her crazy because she could force him. She didn't have a lot of words, but she did have tricks and had figured out his segment. And there was no doubt in her mind that she could compel Harry Wilson to say whatever she wanted, but if she did that, it wouldn't be real. It wouldn't be him. It would be her speaking to herself through him. It was very frustrating. "That car has been all over town," said the woman who was making Emily a sandwich. Emily turned. Across the street sat a dark sedan, windows tinted, engine running against the heat. A skirt of dust betrayed some serious long-haul driving. "You see it?" "Yes," she said. "Not for around here." "No." She looked at the sandwich that the woman Cheryl was making. She had visited this shop nearly every weekday at lunchtime for the past 4 years. She had practically married Cheryl's sandwiches. "It's been to the mines," Cheryl gestured with the knife. "Look at the tires." She looked. The tires were caked in red earth. "Someone from the city, I suppose." "Government?" Cheryl flipped the bread. "Salt and pepper loaf." "No thanks." "Sorry." I'm sorry. I'm just imagining Jennifer Government connected with this, which I guess is not like such a long shot sort of thing to imagine. Anyway, let me go on. "Salt and pepper, love? No thanks." "I keep thinking you might change your mind," said Cheryl, sawing bread. "I can't imagine how you eat it so plain." "I like plain," she said. She carried the sandwich out of the shop, although she no longer felt like eating it. The car crouched in her peripheral vision, but she did not look at it. When it pulled out, she crossed into the pedestrian mall where it could not follow and walked the roundabout route to Tangled Threads. She locked the door and sat behind the counter. She did not know how to feel. 2 years ago, maybe even one, she would have chased that car down the road. She would have beaten her hands against its side and begged it to stop, but now things were different. A young man in an airy gray suit appeared at the door. He pulled the handle, pushed it, and put his hand to the glass and peered inside. When he saw her, he pointed at the handle and mouthed, "Open?" She unlocked. He was young, a boy, really. She could tell from his skin that he had come from nowhere near here. "Thanks," he said. He came inside. He brushed aside his hair, which was a style that she didn't know and dangled in his eyes. "Woo, hot. What can I help you with today?" she said. He smiled as if he appreciated the pretense. "It's good news. You can come home." She said nothing. He glanced out the window. "That was a genuinely long drive. They told me it was long, but it's really something. Or nothing, rather. He looked at her. Nothing and nothing is for as far as you go. Did you get used to it? She didn't answer. It seems to me it would be hard to get used to. You can get used to anything. Of course, he said. We can leave right away. Today? Is that a problem? His eyes were gray, like his suit. She shook her head. She did not want problems. Give me your phone number. I'll call you in a couple of hours. I wouldn't bother packing. There's nothing here you'll need again. If I don't tell people I'm leaving, they'll look for me. I'll be reported missing. It'll get messy. Huh, that's so weird. One moment. Okay, here we go. He was silent. He was going to tell her the organization could handle a missing persons report, but then he shrugged. As you like. He dug in his pockets. Had this boy attended the school? He might have been one of the kids, a skinny cavorting stick boy, too small to register. But she wasn't sure. It all seemed so long ago. You really made yourself a part of this place, huh? It's small, she said. There's no other way. He smiled like he didn't believe her and extended her a card. I'll be in the car. She phoned the owner of Tangled Threads, Mary, and said she needed to leave right away, and her mother was dying. Mary's voice flooded with sympathy and told Emily it was time. Sorry, it was fine. Take as much time as she needed. She said, I didn't know you were still in contact with your family. I wasn't, said Emily. I just heard from them. Then she drove to the hospital and waited. She could never tell where Harry would be, but the best place to wait was the emergency room. Sometimes she sat and read magazines alongside farmers with their hands wrapped in black towels and mothers with green children. Hmm. Oh gosh. Sorry, I'm just looking at something that I am really confused about. Let me continue. Um, hmm. Hmm. That's so weird. I'm sorry, I'm just really distracted by something. I'll go back. Um, he was silent. He was going to tell her the organization could handle a missing persons report, but then he shrugged. As you like. Okay, I already read that part. Then she drove to the hospital and waited. She could never tell where Harry would be. The best place to wait was the emergency room. Sometimes she sat and read magazines alongside farmers with their hands wrapped in black towels, mothers with green children. The emergency room had glass double doors. When the paramedic van pulled up, the sun bouncing off his white hood, it was always thrilling, like winning a prize. But when she saw him, she burst into tears. It was unexpected and shocking, and if that organization boy had been around to see it, who knew what would have happened? Harry came to her, alarmed, and she heard the lie fall out of her about her mother, cancer. She hugged him and inhaled him while she could. Do you want me to come? No, she said, grateful for the offer. You can't. How long will you be? He shook his head. You don't know. It's okay. Take your time. He kissed her head. But come back. I will, she said. And as the words came out, she was surprised at how true they felt. I will, I promise. Eventually she pulled away. There were people watching, and the longer this went on, the harder it became. So when he offered to drive her to the house, she refused. She had to walk away like while she could. I love you, she said. And he smiled sadly, but in retrospect, it was very obvious, wasn't it? She should have seen it coming, but love made people stupid, and she was so very much in love. The emergency room doors parted. She walked through them, and the only thing that made this bearable was the conviction that she'd be back. Hmm. Okay. Eventually, she pulled away. There were people watching, and the longer this went on, the harder it became. So when he offered to drive her to the house, she refused. She had to walk away while she could. "I love you," she said, and he smiled sadly, and in retrospect, it was very obvious, wasn't it? She should have seen it coming, but love made people stupid, and she was so very much in love. The emergency room doors parted, and she walked through them, and the only thing that made this bearable was the conviction that she'd be back. An hour later, she was in the black sedan, watching dust swallow Broken Hill in the side mirror. The boy brought the car up to 90 miles an hour and manipulated his phone with one hand. "Sleep if you want," he told her. "There's a whole lot of nothing for the next 8 hours." This was true. She could do it. The boy kept glancing at her, and she was curled on the seat, putting her back to him. A while later, a car passed, heading in the opposite direction, gleaming on the top and pancaked with dirt on the bottom. She watched it recede in the mirror. A minute later there was another one just like it, then another. "Are there more of you?" "Hmm?" he said. "The cars," she said. He shrugged. "Probably locals." She slouched back down. A truck appeared on the road ahead, following the cars. A black 18-wheeler with no signage, hauling a steel container, unlike any she'd ever seen. But this time she didn't say anything. The journey was 34 hours, long enough to develop a burning hate for the organization, boy, and everything he stood for. She was glad the first-class seats were like capsules, which gave her oops, which gave her space to hide her misery. She didn't know what had triggered the arrival of the boy, whether it was simply enough time passing for the organization to consider her suitably chastened, or they had been observing her, or something had happened, or what. But whichever it was, she would be expected to be in charge of her emotions. She deplaned, disoriented and bruised somewhere in the core of her body, into DC winter sunshine. A limo whisked her to a grand hotel, where the boy bid her farewell and she slept for 14 hours. She woke to a blinking red light on the bedside phone. She pressed for voicemail, thinking it might be Elliot, which would be frightening, or Yeats, which would be more so, but it was neither. Instead, a girl she didn't know told her she was expected at a particular fashion store in 30 minutes. The girl ended her message without saying goodbye, as if she'd been cut off, although Emily knew she hadn't been. She caught a cab downtown and tried on skirts and sheer shirts. In the mirror she looked freakishly tan. "This will make more than a jacket." "Sorry, this will take more than a jacket," said the man, and introduced himself as a personal style advisor. "You're a cave woman in a suit, dear." He forwarded her to a salon, where a bald man dragged a brush through her hair with occasional exclamations of dismay. Now she was alongside other women. She started to see the problem. Her hair was the wrong kind of blonde, the kind from the sun. There was a gritty quality to her skin. She had absorbed Broken Hill. She had soaked it up and become savage. "Do not worry," said the hairdresser. "We've beaten worse than this." Afterward, before a graveyard of fallen hair, she found herself with a short bob and bangs like a steel door. It seemed like they had tried to hide her face. She looked strange to herself. "Did you wear glasses?" asked the hairdresser. You should consider that." She was shuttled back to the first clothing store, where her new look was praised effusively. She actually started to feel good, and then the personal style advisor said, "Well, it's an improvement anyway." She had forgotten how indirectly people spoke here. She had become accustomed to taking people literally. Hours later, laden with shopping bags, she was driven to a tall glass office building that offered no identifying logo. She entered a simple lobby, feeling newly manufactured in her gray woolen suit and stiff black shoes, her heart pounding in case she was about to meet someone she knew. But there was no one. A red sofa, a few paintings. It could have been everywhere. One moment, I just She waited at the reception desk until a young man with invisible eyebrows emerged from the rear office. "I'm Emily Ruff," she said. "Just a moment." When he returned, he had a plastic card which he placed on the counter. It was blank but for NLL5 D4. She looked at him. "That means level 5, desk 4. "Oh," she said. "Thank you." She hefted her bags. It took her a minute to figure out the elevators. She had to insert the card into a slot before the buttons would do anything. Then the doors closed and she rose toward whatever was up there. It turned out that level 5 was nothing but an anonymous corporate space with a dozen or so roomy cubicles. Almost all were empty. It was very quiet, and as her shopping bags rustled and banged, she wished she'd left them with the receptionist. She passed a young woman on the phone and a boy with long hair and glasses who looked up from his computer screen, but his expression didn't change, and she didn't stop walking. She spotted identifying plates on the desk corners and began to triangulate D4. It was in a corner with a pretty amazing view over South DC. It had a chair, a phone, a computer, and that was it. She stashed her bags beneath the desk and tested the chair. She waited. The phone would ring, she guessed, eventually. After a minute, the boy with glasses appeared, accompanied by a girl whose hair was good kind of blonde. She looked familiar, although Emily couldn't place her. She seemed very young. "Wow, welcome." "Hi," she said. "Thank you." "Isaac Rosenberg," the boy said. "Nice to meet you." "I'm Rain," said the girl. "Kathleen Rain." "Hi," Emily said. There was an awkward silence. "I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm here." "Typical," said the boy, Rosenberg. "We only got word a couple of days ago that you were coming. You're in NL. Neurolinguistics?" He nodded. "Testing and measurement." "Have you done any NL work before?" She shook her head. "It's good for theoretical grounding, supposedly. Anyway, we'll get you started, teach you the system. That's okay with you." "Sure," she said. The girl, Rain, was still looking at her like she was missing something, so she said, "I'm sorry, have we met?" Several expressions flitted across the girl's face in quick succession, one of which said yes, and another that told her she wasn't supposed to ask. "No," the girl said, but Emily remembered now. They had met at the school. Emily had forgotten because it was in that first week, and the girl had failed the tests and had not been admitted. She had been very young. Emily had tried to make her feel better by saying she could try again next year. Her name had been Gertie. "Hey, I apologize if this is inappropriate," said Rosenberg, "but they really haven't told us much, and we don't want to tread on any toes, so I'm wondering if you actually want to do NL, or we should just leave you alone. I actually think I'm actually here to do NL. I'm just another graduate now, I guess." Rosenberg and Rain laughed. She stopped. Then stopped. "I'm sorry," said Rosenberg. "I thought you were joking." "Why would that be a joke?" "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to imply anything. You haven't, but please tell me what you know about me." "Well, nothing, just your name." He pointed to her partition. There was a gray rectangle of plastic, a nameplate she hadn't noticed before. Her first thought was that she was at the wrong desk. Then she realized she wasn't, because of Yeats. Because 4 years ago he had said, "I have a name for you, when the time is right." The nameplate said, Virginia Woolf. The woman on the phone she'd passed earlier turned out to be Sashona. The last time Illy had seen her was on the hockey field at the school. "Screw me sideways," said Sashona. "You're Wolf?" She looked at Emily with her hands on her hips. Sashona had grown up. She had become a woman. "We thought you died." "No." "Holy cripes, where have you been?" She shook her head before Emily could answer. "Don't answer. Stupid question. Wow, look at you. You're so different." Emily smiled awkwardly. She wasn't sure that was a good thing. "What on earth did you do to earn that name?" "I don't know." Shoshona looked at her, and Emily realized she did not believe this at all. "You look great. You too." "Patty Smith," said Shoshona. "That's my name now. Smith." "Oh, Smith's good," said Emily. "Ah, F off," said Shoshona, smiling. For a second it was like her being back at school. She was reminded how much she disliked neurolinguistics. She had forgotten that since school. At first it was fascinating. It was all Amazonian tribes using recognizably Latin words, and how saying "guh" could make you hungry. Then came syntax, and semantic violations, and synaptic coupling. It required enormous amounts of rote memorization, all of which she'd lost over the past 4 years, and the ability to juggle symbols in her head. At school, students didn't talk much about what they thought of specific subjects, but when she had mentioned she was studying neurolinguistics to Jeremy Lattern, he had looked sympathetic. This was like those classes again, only now she was expected to know everything. Rosenberg and Rain taught her how to use the computer. There was a ticket system. When people wanted her to do something, they logged a ticket, and when she was finished, she plugged her work into the ticket and closed it. Mostly the people who wanted Emily to do something were from labs, which she gathered was located somewhere else in the building, although it was clear that other people were reading the tickets too, because they sometimes requested clarifications. Those people, she thought, were higher-ups, organization people like Elliot. But there were no names in the ticket system, only numbers. Sometimes she would read a ticket over and over, wondering if there was anything of Elliot's mannerisms in it, but she could never tell for sure. After a while, she stopped expecting to see Elliot. Apparently, she was to be left alone. To do what exactly, she didn't know. Maybe they really did want her to relearn NL. Maybe they were secretly observing her, but if this was the case, what they were observing was nothing very interesting. She was assigned to an apartment, a bank account, and a cell phone. All this was arranged. Her apartment. Sorry, I don't mean to be yawning so much. Ugh. All this was arranged. Her apartment balcony overlooked the meat-packing district, and sometimes she stood out there with a bottle of wine wrapped in a jacket that never really kept out the cold, watching the city breathe. A very few days she did something stupid. She stayed up late, or set the alarm early, or left the apartment in the freezing dark. She walked in a random direction for a random amount of time and found a payphone, and plugged coins into it. As it rang, she reminded herself to modulate her voice. Avoid identifiable phrases and end the call as soon as possible. She told herself this is the last time for at least a week, but because if she was caught, she had no doubt that the consequences would be terrible. But then the line would connect and Harry's voice would fill her, and she would forget about that. She got to visit labs. It turned out to be in the bowels of the building, underground. It was brightly lit and full of techs in white coats, and had two plastic keypad-protected doors between her and anyone more senior than a receptionist. They interviewed people down here, she knew, attached them to probes, and ran them through MRIs to record what happened when they heard words. Then they sent the data upstairs to NL for analysis. Where these test subjects came from, she didn't know, although once, while looking for a payphone near George Washington University, She had seen a paper stapled to a light pole offering $50 for volunteers for a psychology experiment. So maybe that, when the data came through the ticking system, sometimes under observable effects, it said psychotic break, or loss of function, or coma. She tried to not think about this too much, but it was obvious that people got hurt down there. So Shona Smith, as Emily would never feel comfortable calling her, had changed a lot. She laughed, which she had never done at school, and found everything amazing. This struck Emily as unlikely behavior, since Shoshona should have been guarding her personality to prevent segmentation. She decided it was feigned, a behavioral smokescreen. The higher levels didn't do this. Emily had talked with Elliot plenty and had no idea of his segment simply because he gave nothing away, but it made sense for a newer poet. It made her wonder if she should be doing the same thing, and if Shoshona thought Emily was trying to figure out her segment, and if Shoshona was trying to figure out hers. One day, as a tall, handsome barista delivered coffees to their cafe table, Shoshona opened her mouth and a snarl of unintelligible words tripped out. "Love me," Shoshona said, and the barista spilled the coffee and went away and came back to ask for Shoshona's phone number. This was how Emily discovered that in the 4 years she had been selling blouses in the blouses in the desert, Shoshona had been learning words. Emily murmured her appreciation, but the truth was she had been shocked. She hadn't realized how far behind she was. How was she supposed to catch up? She had no one to ask but Shoshona, and although they were friendly, she was afraid to expose her ignorance. She decided to hope that one day somebody would appear to educate her. In the meantime, she'd read data and tried to pound it into thoughtful conclusions. The organization was interested in refining its psychographic model and finding ever better ways to classify people more accurately into fewer segments. She looked for responses in graphs that shouldn't be there, tiny bumps and blue lines, and wrote reports on possible psychographic overlaps and segment boundary blurring and possible new avenues for segmentation. She had access to a vast database of shopping habits, internet usage patterns, traffic flows, and more if she wanted. She could drill right down to an individual and look up where they went last Tuesday and what they bought and what did. But that was not very useful. No one was interested in individuals. She was supposed to look for connections between them, neurological commonalities that allowed them to be grouped together and targeted by a common word. Whether anybody acted on her work or even read it, she had no idea. It became harder to find a payphone that hadn't used to call Harry before. Every night as she walked the streets, she half expected Elliot or Yeats or maybe that kid in the airy suit to step out of the darkness, and then everything would be over. But that never happened, so she kept doing it. One day she got a corrupted data set from a ticket, so she picked up the phone and dialed labs. She was not supposed to do this. At least she was supposed to do it as little as possible. Texts were isolated from analysts for security reasons, since texts were not poets and were therefore vulnerable to compromise. Why an analyst might want to compromise a text, she had no idea. It seemed pretty pointless, but that was the rule. It didn't seem very effective either, since although the texts were supposed to be anonymous, they gave themselves away in their writing styles. One overused evidently, one had never heard of apostrophes, that kind of thing, so she did not have a great deal of respect for the rule. "Hello," she said when Labs picked up. "This is Analyst 319. I need a validation check on a dataset, please." "Open a ticket," said a male voice. She had seen no evidence of women in Labs. "I did open a ticket, and it came back the same. I want it done again." "What's your ticket number?" she told him. There was a pause. "The dataset has been recompiled." "I know it's been recompiled, but I want it recompiled, because it's still wrong. The data set is accurate." "Guy," she said, "I'm looking at it right now. The P graph is blank. I don't know if you've got a format error, missing data, or what, but the graph cannot be blank." "It's not blank." She opened her mouth because that was preposterous. She had seen thousands of P graphs and knew what they were supposed to look like. Mountain ranges. Sometimes they had many peaks, sometimes just one, but the point was they were jagged. The lines went up and down. But as she looked at it again, she realized Labs was right. There was a line she hadn't noticed because it ran along the very top of the grid and was dead straight. Clear? said Labs. Yes, she said, thank you. She put down the phone. She looked at the graph a while. She walked to Sashona's desk. Hey, she said, what's synapsis? What's the context? It's in a new ticket. After subject response, instead of a rating, it says synapsis. Well, synapsis is just compromise, said Sashona, but they shouldn't use that term. That's sloppy. Why? It's the ideal. The theoretical state of perfect compromise doesn't exist in real life. Oh, Emily said. I see. Tell them to say what they mean, Sashona said, returning to her work. Probably someone new. Right, she said. She did her best to write a meaningful report about the oddly flat graph and dutifully submitted it to the ticket system. Another ticket was waiting, but she felt distracted and gazed at passing clouds instead. She had the feeling something was going to happen. 6 minutes later, the power went out. She rolled her chair back from her dead monitor. Heads poked up from the cubicles. I thought we had a backup generator, said Shoshona. Her voice sounded loud. Emily hadn't noticed the hum of air conditioning until it was gone. An alarm began to jingle. People's voices rose. Rosenberg speculated about fire in labs, which would be a problem, because a lot of those doors were time locked. They made for stairwells, but Emily didn't follow. Shoshona hung in again, and she realized Labs was right. There was a line. She hadn't noticed because it ran along the very top of the grid and was dead straight. Clear said, wait, what? It just, went back a page, I'm sorry. Shoshona hung in the doorway. Wolf? She shook her head. She was feeling stupid. She had waited too long. She should have walked out of this building 6 minutes ago. She should have done it the moment she saw that graph. Wolf, it's not optional. Time to go. She ran through floor plans in her head. There was no fire escape. She had realized that before. No glass cases saying in case of emergency. No one had ever gathered them in conference room and explained where to go in an orderly fashion in the event that they needed to evacuate. So Shona gave up on her and disappeared. Emily could go up or down. Those were her only options. She reached the stairwell and started climbing. She heard disembodied voices rising around her like departed spirits. A door boomed, and there was a silence but for her own breathing. She didn't hear anyone else going down. She realized no one from other floors. She stopped to kick off her shoes, which were helping no one. She climbed and finally saw the daylight. She even jogged up the last few steps, but found herself at a scuffed steel door. It was chained and padlocked. She tried it anyway. She sat on the concrete and tried to figure out what next. Somewhere far below, a door clacked open and slammed. This happened 8 or 9 times. She listened, but couldn't hear anything more. F, she said. She was peeved at herself. She had spent too long in Broken Hill, not needing an escape route. She balled her hands into fists. Think. There was a skylight. It was secured, but how well? She went back to the door and put one foot into a loop of chain and pulled herself up, searching for finger holds. Balancing, she reached for the skylight, but it was too far away. She heard a rasping. What the F that was, she didn't know, but it was coming from below and getting closer. She managed to inch her way up until she was standing on the bar of the door. The chain swung and clanked like a bell, like she was deliberately trying to attract attention. Her fingertips brushed the skylight, but that was the best she could do. She managed her grip on the door frame. She could possibly grab this thing and pull it out of the ceiling as she fell, but there was a very slim chance of that happening. She heard footsteps, boots on concrete. The rasping punctuated the air at regular intervals, like breathing, but not. She should have learned words. She should not have waited for someone to teach her. She should have found them somehow. She leaped at the skylight, and her fingers skidded uselessly over the plastic, and she fell to the concrete and banged her knee. Suck, she said. A man came up the stairs, a kind of man. He was wearing black from head to toe, and his eyes were black, bulky goggles, like night vision gear, set into a fighter pilot's helmet with bulging plastic hemispheres over the ears. He looked like he could walk through fire. The rasping was his air regulator. Shaka fiha manik dano, she said. This was a mess of attention words for random segments. The chances of it having any effect were about 1,000 to 1. Lie down! He extended a gloved hand. "Come with me." These words came out flat and computer modulated. She didn't move. If he came closer, she could jump him. She didn't see a gun. She would go for those goggles. If she could even dislodge them, it would make it hard for him to chase her. "Hurry!" The man gestured to the stairs. "There's a fire." "There isn't," she said. "Is there?" He didn't answer. She figured out by now that he couldn't hear her. She began to walk down the steps. The lobby had been converted to a makeshift hospital full of white cloth screens. The windows were blacked out with a plastic sheeting. Black-suited spacemen moved between them, respirators hissing. She saw no one's face she didn't know from level 5. She glimpsed Shoshana on a trolley bed, but then lost her behind a screen. She was told to stay where she was. Nobody spoke to her or to each other, or at least that she could hear. An hour later, a spaceman drew back her curtain. He wasn't wearing his helmet, and she was surprised at his youth. He had a mustache thin and fluffy. She wondered if this was the guy who had fetched her from the top of the stairs. If so, she should have gone with Naratak. "You can go," he began to disassemble screens. What was all that about? But she wasn't really expecting an answer. Outside, she found the others huddled on the street. It was dusk, the tail end of a rush hour. "A drill," said Shoshana, "but for what?" "No point wondering," said Rain. "We'll never know." "True that," said Shoshana. She was wondering why Emily hadn't come downstairs with them, and by extension what Emily knew that she didn't. Emily couldn't hang around any longer. She started walking, and by the time she reached the subway she was shaking. She would not do anything rash. She would come to work in the morning, go to her desk, and do her job, like always. But this had been a lesson. A reminder. The next time something like this happened, she told herself she would have a way out. She kept a notepad and wrote down syllables she noticed were used more frequently by the psychographic than another. On the train, she listened for deviations from the average. She picked apart the words she knew, looking for patterns. She was surprised at how obvious they were. Liberals overused A and E, the front vowel sounds. Authoritarians were thick with fricatives. She developed hunches from newspapers and TV and websites, tracked down a suitable representative at a bar or church meeting or the grocery store, and tried trotting them out like a safecracker listening for tumblers. Sut, stut, sta. She slid guesses into sentences, and usually people didn't even seem to register them. They didn't make it past the perceptual filter, ignored as verbal static, and worse, they thought she was stuttering. Her hunches were usually wrong, but sometimes she saw a flinch, a tiny flare across the muscles of the face, and that was a tumbler. It was a hard way to learn words. She could do this for a year and still know less than Shoshana, but it was very thorough. It forced her to understand the underlying principles. She deduced a preference for alliteration in a segment from what she knew of the segments around it, leaping from there to lalito, a command word, and this thrilled her more than anything she had been taught, because she had found it herself. Oops. Let me try that again. Sorry. I'm typing in the dark. Let me just delete that. No, I'm not gonna delete it. Okay, I'll just let it. She kept a note. Is this the right? Okay. Once, sharing drinks at the corner bar, Shoshana confided that she had trouble with segment 191. "I get kava kifa. said Shoshona, leaning forward, holding her wine glass at an angle that Emily was tempted to correct. I can get to Fedorient, but then I'm lost, she gestured expansively. I can never remember. This was part of a tale concerning a high-speed joyride down the I-48. A police officer on a motorbike and a speeding ticket Shoshona had hilariously failed to talk her way out of. Okay, let me go back to reading. A police officer, okay, on a motorbike and a speeding ticket Shoshona had hilariously failed to talk her way out of. But Emily was astounded. Apparently, Shoshona couldn't see that the words of segment 191 were bound together. She could understand if Shoshone had forgotten the entire tree, but if you knew one, you had half of the others. Shoshona did not seem to get this. She had memorized them one at a time, as if they were unconnected. like a tray of random objects in a child's puzzle game. One thing Emily never got over, was the feeling of being watched. She wasn't sure how, but it was happening. She tried varying her route to work, checking reflections, doubling back unexpectedly, but never saw anyone. At home, she double bolted, but felt no safer. Her feeling was that Yeats was in the apartment. That was her impression. One night, she dreamed he came into her bedroom like a black wind and leaned over her, watching her without emotion, as if she were a thing beneath glass. On the first Tuesday of her 6 months in Washington, she left her apartment and walked to the local train station. She rode escalators down the platform and waited for the red line. It was warm. She was thinking about getting to her desk and taking off her shoes. A man at the end of the platform had a guitar and was banging out a song she loathed for personal reasons, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. The train began to pull in. In its passing windows, she glimpsed Elliot. For a moment she wasn't sure whether she had seen him inside the train or reflected behind her. Then the train ground to a halt, and the doors opened, and he said from behind her, "Let it go." She watched the train pull out. She was 16 years old again, just like that. But then she turned, and he wasn't so frightening. He had aged around the eyes. He was just a man, after all. "Are you in love?" Elliot said. She didn't answer. "Don't lie to me." "Yes." He looked away. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'll stop. Your next mistake will end you. This is as far as I can go to protect you. You need to appreciate this." "I do, I promise." His eyes searched her. "No more calls. Not one." I'm done, Elliot." In this moment she really meant it. He walked away. She stood on the empty platform. She did not call Harry that night. The following day she did not call him. She had gone longer than this without hearing his voice, but now it was different, because it was the end. She felt sick. She couldn't taste anything. It was crazy, but she could no longer taste food. At work, she clicked through tickets and wrote reports, but couldn't tell if they made any sense. When it got too much, she went to the bathroom and put her head between her knees. She made herself repeat, "Do not call him." She felt possessed by a cruel, heartless Emily who did not love. She surrendered on the third day. It was a terrible betrayal of Elliot. She realized that. He had stuck his neck out for her in ways she couldn't quite comprehend, and she had promised to stop. But the fact was she couldn't. She had tried, but she couldn't. It had been 6 months, and home was still on the other side of the world. She couldn't call Harry again. Elliot would know, or worse, others would. There was no stay but keep calling him option. She could only leave. Years before in San Francisco, Emily had a girlfriend, had been crossing the McDonald's parking lot and found themselves boxed in by a group of barely pubescent boys with low pants and twitchy smiles. One of the boys had a gun, which he kept putting away and getting out again, swapping from hand to hand, and the others began to ask Emily and her friend if they knew what hot bees they were, how badly they wanted to get effed up, or how badly they were about to get effed up. This was a bad situation even without the gun, but Emily had been young and stupid. So she walked up to the boy with the gun and pulled it right out of his hands. She had good fingers even then because of the card tricks. She didn't know a thing about guns except which end to hold, but that was enough, so the boys stood around looking scared while Emily and her friends made a lot of silly threats and walked out backward. The lesson here was probably that she should not cross parking lots in bad neighborhoods, but also when you were outmuscled. If there was a gun around, you could get control of the situation by getting the gun. Emily was outmuscled. She did not have a gun, but she suspected there was one in the basement. Did I just miss a page? No, I didn't miss a page. This is okay. All right. I all right. Help. I am trying to get in touch with everyone from the church group for our big Christmas get together. We really want to invite everyone who spent any time with us over the year. I'd like to think I'm quite adept at sleuthing people down, but there's one person I simply can't locate, Virginia Woolf. One might think that with a name like that, she'd be easy to find. Unfortunately, the opposite seems true. It's impossible to use the internet because of all those pages about the famous writer. Very frustrating. Anyway, I was hoping someone might know some way to reach her, because she seemed quite attentive and interested in what we had to say. Much love, Belinda F. 2. Beneath her desk was a gym bag. The top layer was clothes Emily actually wore while working out, and under those was a second set she'd stashed there against this day. She logged out of the ticket system and slung the bag over her shoulder. On her way out, she passed Shoshona, who was on the phone, and Emily mouthed Jim, and Shoshona nodded. She felt a small pang because, although they'd never been friends, for this place they were pretty close, and Emily was never going to see her again. She walked 2 blocks to a small cafe, a place where she came sometimes for lunch. In the restroom, she changed into the clothes from her gym bag, a t-shirt, a pair of frayed jeans, and an old denim jacket. She scrubbed the makeup from her face, collected a nice film of grime from the floor tiles, and dabbed this under her eyes and across her hairline. Her work clothes in the gym bag she stashed behind a toilet. She didn't expect to see those again, either. She circled the block and approached the office from the lane on the other side. Here was a nondescript door with a sign that said, "The Robert Lowell Institute of Psychological Research." It looked like just another doomed business renting space on the wrong side of the building, but it wasn't. It was the public face of labs. She pressed the intercom and waited. "Hello? Hey," she said. "My name is Jessica Henry. I did one of your, tests a couple of weeks ago, and you said I should come back if I wanted." The door buzzed. She pushed it open and went up the narrow steps. At the top was a small waiting room with empty chairs and an energetic television. A woman with high hair sat behind the sliding glass. "Take a seat," she said. Emily sat and flipped through people. She had been here before. The first time, the day after she had determined to start planning. She had found the entrance but not gone inside. She looked up Robert Lowell Institute in the phone book and called them from a payphone for what it was worth, and determined that yes, they were interested in volunteers for testing, and walk-ins were accepted between 11 and 1 o'clock. They had wanted her to come in the next day, but she demurred because she hadn't acquired a false identity yet. It took her a week to find Jessica Henry, a girl Emily's age who had no fixed address and little interest in the world beyond where she might score her next hit. Jessica took Emily straight away, maybe sensing a shared history in addition to the potential to scam some money, and gushed more personal information to Emily than she really needed. In exchange, Emily pressed $100 bill into Jessica's hand and squeezed her, and said, "Keep this safe," then stole it back when Jessica wasn't looking, because honestly, that wasn't going to help anyone. The Institute had asked her to fill out a questionnaire. She went through this carefully, answering the psychographic questions honestly, which exposed her completely, of course, to anyone who divined that Jessica Henry was her. She was segment 220, she already knew, which would be good, because labs could never get through enough 220s. After the questionnaire, they'd taken her to a small bright room with a forest of video cameras. They attached electrodes to her skull and showed her TV ads. These were kind of funny because they were not ads at all, or at least not for real products. They were excuses to broadcast words. After 40 or 50, she blacked out, and when she woke up, everyone pretended she had just fallen asleep. She didn't know what they had done to her, but until the report bubbled through the ticketing system. When she'd seen subject segment 220, she'd scanned it anxiously, but there was no mention of permanent damage. She'd been pretty sure that labs wouldn't do destructive testing on a walk-in, but it would have been a bad thing to get wrong. A few days later, the prepaid cell phone she kept to answer as Jessica Henry rang, and a man chatted with her about whether she would be interested in coming in again. She said yes, if there was money in it, and he asked why she hadn't put it on a home address. She explained about it being a tough time and just needing to catch a break, and would she get paid or not, and what did it matter where she lived? Once she established that no one would notice one way or the other what happened to Jessica Henry, the man said to come in any time. They would love to see her, and here she was. "Jessica," the receptionist said. Emily looked up from her magazine. "You're up." The door buzzed. She followed a white-coated man with no chin through corridors lined with steel-caged lamps. "So I get $100 for this," she said, "right?" "Right," he said. Last time I fell asleep, she was trying to engage him to figure out if he was anyone she knew from the ticket system. "I hope the ads are more interesting this time." They reached a double set of elevators. "We won't be showing you ads today." "No? What then?" An elevator arrived. The man gestured for her to enter. "It's a product." The doors closed, and despite herself, her chest tightened. It was a small elevator. It felt like a very small elevator. "What kind of product?" He scanned his clipboard. "I'm afraid I can't tell you that without potentially polluting your reaction." "Polluting your reaction? You guys are weird." The elevator numbers ticked down. "Is it like a bottle of shampoo, a car, or what?" "It's strongly important for our tests that you don't have any preformed expectations." "Oh, okay, no problem. Strongly important." Okay, where was I? Okay, no problem. Strongly important. That was an odd phrase. She had seen that one in the ticketing system. The doors parted, the corridor's walls were pale blue, a calming color. The tech started walking, and she followed him to a set of plastic doors where he had to swipe his ID tag and tap a code into a keypad. 50 yards later, the same thing happened again. During this process, she eyed ceiling mounted video cameras. There was a second elevator. When this one stopped, the walls were bare concrete. No more psychological blue. She didn't like this much. The corridor ended at a perfectly round steel door that was twice as tall as she was. It looked like a blank vault. The door stood open, and beyond it she could see a small concrete room with a single orange plastic chair. By the vault door stood another white-coated man and a gray-uniformed guy who looked like maybe security. Her chinless text said, "Verifying I have prototype 9001186." The other man said, "Confirming prototype 9001186. Verifying subject, Henry Jessica. Identifying number 31170. Confirming subject, time is 80:58. Time lock is released and chamber is open." "What is all this?" she said. She tried to grin. "Security," said her tech, not looking at her. "The product is very valuable." He entered the concrete room, which required stepping over a thick metal rim. "Follow me, please." She did so. The air was freezing. The walls were featureless concrete, but for six bulbous yellow lights in wire cages. Four tripod-mounted video cameras were aimed at the plastic chair. In the middle of the room was a box, a huge steel coffin-shaped box. "Please sit." She said. "It's all right, Jessica. It'll just be like last time, only this time we're showing you a product instead of ads. I'm going to fit you with the helmet so we can measure your brain activity, okay?" "Yeah," she said, although she was thinking, "No, no, no." She sat. Even the plastic was icy. The steel box had no lid, not that she could see. Around its sides were thick vertical rods. Pistons? She stared because she could not imagine what the deal was with this box. The tech touched her hair. She flinched. "Just relax." He began to fit the helmet. "Hey, what is this again? What kind of—" "Just a product." "Yeah, but seems pretty weird for a product. So what kind of product is it?" He didn't answer. Turn him, she thought. Strongly important. She had read 100 tickets from this guy, and he was segment 55, no question, and she had figured out words for that. She could compromise him in 2 seconds flat and make him walk her out of here. She didn't know what next. There was no next in that scenario. No one she wanted. But why was there a box? Why the F was there a box? Almost done, Jessica. She had not anticipated a box. She thought maybe an envelope, a man sitting opposite. preparing to read a word, and before he could, she would take it from him because he wouldn't be prepared for a poet. These guys, these isolated texts, she didn't think they even knew what poets were. They just did what they were told, but that plan was clearly F because whatever was in this box, this thing had turned a person's P graph into a flat line, caused synapses, was too important for an envelope. She had been foolish to imagine that. There's a small needle in this one. She felt a shiver of cold enter her skull. All done. The tech moved to the video cameras and began turning them on. Red lights gleamed at her. Just clear your mind and look at the product. What product? The product that will come out of the box after I've left. What do you mean it will come out of the box? I can't tell you without polluting my reaction, I know, but why is there a box? What's inside it? Don't worry about the box. Just tell me why there has to. I don't know what's in the box, he said. Okay? She saw it was true. And now that she looked, did she notice how the video cameras were covering only her? Not the box. It was so that later, after it was done and the box had closed again, people could study the tapes without being exposed. Did she notice the tech had been avoiding eye contact? She knew what that meant, right? He placed a black device on the floor. This is a speaker. I won't be able to hear you, but I'll keep talking to you throughout the process. I changed my mind, she said. I don't want to do this. He glanced over his shoulder. The man in the gray uniform hovered outside the vault door. Voltaine, she thought. Carlotte Sisidin Nux. Save me from that guard. It might work. The two weren't far apart. The tech might reach him before he drew his gun. The guard said, We have a problem? No, she said. No, I'm okay. Time, the guard said. 30 seconds. Just relax, the tech told her. He stepped out. Shortly afterward, the vault door began to move. She expected it to clang, but it closed gently as a shadow. Then bolts fired like gunshots, and she jumped. The echoes lasted forever, and then all she could hear was her own breathing. Harry, she thought. Harry, I may have effed this up. The black speaker the tech had left on the floor emitted a burst of static. It took her a moment to realize it was talking. Jessica. It sounded like he was broadcasting from the moon. We're going to give you a few minutes to relax. Drenched in static, it sounded like relax. Please breathe normally and remain in a calm, natural state. She began to peel the helmet from her hand. Part of it resisted. When she finally got it off, she saw that it was the needle, which was 4 inches long and wet with clear fluid. She put that on the floor and tried not to think about it. There were thin wires coming out of the helmet in a bunch of places, and she followed these to a tiny gray container strapped to the underside of the chair, with nothing inside but a chip and a battery. Everything in this room was self-powered, she realized. The cage lights, the video cameras, the radio speaker. They were so careful to let nothing in or out, the room wasn't even wired. If that door didn't open in the next few hours, she would suffocate. I have some good news, Jessica. We can actually pay you a little more. $1,000 for your time. How does that sound? So the box would be on a timer, and these techs probably didn't have any control over it. They probably just knew when it was scheduled to open, which meant there would be safety margins, a little time for everyone to get settled, which she could use. Think about what you might do with that $1,000, Jessica. Something pretty great, I bet. She went to the video cameras but found nothing unusual. She carried them to a corner one by one and left them in a pile with their red eyes pointing at the concrete. Whatever happened here, she wasn't going to be in a show. She wasn't going to be watched and analyzed and used to improve procedures. She went back to the chair and circled it, but it was just a chair. Just another minute, Jessica. Almost there. She knelt in front of the box. She touched it. Nothing terrible happened, so she ran her hands around it. It was warmer than she expected. She found a tiny seam in the steel, but couldn't get so much as a fingernail into it and wasn't sure she wanted to. She didn't know what she was looking for. Options, but there weren't any. She stood and paced. The only other thing was the speaker, so she went to that. To her surprise, it had a little compartment. Inside were red pills. She looked at these for a while. She didn't think they were helpful. All right, Jessica. It's time to open the box. Gah, she said. She began to walk toward the box, but her heart failed her and she retreated back to the chair. F. Something mechanical purred. The seam she had found cracked open and the top of the box began to rise. She squeezed shut her eyes and groped her way into a corner. curling up against the concrete and plugging her ears with her fingers. That song she'd heard the busker playing on the train platform with Elliot, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. She used to sing that, back in San Francisco before she learned card tricks. It was how she'd met Benny. He played guitar. Lucy was the best earner, Benny said, so that was mainly what she sang. She must have sung it 5 times an hour, day after day. At first she liked it, but then it was like an infection, and there was nothing she could do and nowhere she could go without it running across her brain or humming on her lips, and God knew she tried. She was smashing herself with sex and drugs, and the song began to find its way even there. One day Benny played the opening chord, and she just couldn't do it. She could not sing that effing song, not again. She broke down because she was only 15, and Benny took her behind the mall and told her it would be okay, but she had to sing. It was the biggest earner. She kind of lost it, and then so did Benny, and that was the first time he hit her. She ran away for a while, but she came back to him because she had nothing else, and it seemed okay. It seemed like they had a truce. She would not complain about her bruised face, and he would not ask her to sing Lucy. She had been all right with this. She had thought that was a pretty good deal. Now there was something coming out of the box, and she reached for the most virulent meme she knew, Lucy in the Sky, she sang with Diamonds. Time passed, and she did not die. She did not lose her mind. In the spaces between song words she heard things. For this reason she kept singing, shrieking out the words. Then she caught a burst of static and realized it was just the tech talking to her through the speaker. She didn't think she had to fear the tech, only the box. So she lowered her voice a little and eventually unplugged one ear. Stand on one leg, said the speaker. She removed her other finger from her ear. She didn't move for a while, in case the box was going to talk and she needed to replug her ears. But they had said they wanted her to look at something, hadn't they? Not listen. Touch your left elbow. She began to feel her way across the concrete. When she reached the box, she felt her way up its side. Above the seam there was no more steel. She slid her hands over the lip and felt something cool and rigid, plastic maybe. She pressed against it. It yielded slightly, just enough to detect. She sat back on her haunches and thought about this. Now your right elbow, please, Jessica. She crawled across the floor until she reached a wall and followed that to her pile of video cameras. She dragged one back to the box. It was probably catching glimpses of her. She confirmed the contours of the box, the plastic bubble that seemed to encase whatever was inside, and got to her feet and hefted the camera by its tripod. Take off your shoes. She raised the camera. Like golf, she thought. She swung, and there was a glass explosion that told her she had missed the plastic. She adjusted her grip and tried again. This time she received a more satisfying sound. She put down the tripod and groped at the plastic, seeking damage. Sit down. A scratch. A minor deformation. Not big enough to work with, but it was something. It was proof of concept. She got to her feet and raised the tripod again. Put your foot in your mouth as far as it will go. She swung and swung until her arms ached and sweat ran down her face. She dropped the tripod, sure that she would find nothing but shattered plastic, but it didn't feel as ruined as she'd expected. Her hands moved over sharp plastic edges like rough knives. She began to pry these apart and force her hand between them. You want to run through the protocols again? The speaker muttered. Then, okay, I'll finish. Her middle finger touched something cool, but she couldn't grip it. She pressed, and it bit. Ow, she said. Ow, ow, it was sharp. Thicker than she expected, irregularly shaped. She had been thinking paper, maybe cardboard, material on which a word would be inscribed, but this was neither. She began to work it out between the plastic knives. Jessica, come over to the walkie-talkie, to where my voice is coming from. The thing got stuck on the broken plastic mouth, and she waggled it back and forth. She couldn't figure out what it was, and yet it felt familiar. She pulled with all her strength and heard a tearing, a ripping that she hoped mightily was plastic and not some vital part of whatever she was withdrawing. Then it popped free. She clutched it, panting. The speaker here has a compartment on the other side. Open this. There are 4 red pills inside. These are cyanide pills. If you eat them, you will die. It's important that you know this. If you understand that eating the pills will kill you, nod. She shrugged her denim jacket and wrapped it carefully around the thing. She probably would have been smart to keep track of which way it had been facing, in case it had a good side and a bad side. She was thinking of words written on paper again, but it was too late for that. When she was sure no part of it was showing, she opened her eyes. She was surprised by the room's size. In her imagination it had grown enormous. Swallow all the pills. Behind her was the box. Empty, she hoped, or whatever had been going to take her away her mind, and leave her amenable to the speaker's terrible instructions. But she was not going to test that theory. She looked at the bundle of jacket. It took an effort to do that. The thing seemed roughly book-shaped, but irregular and heavy. She stole a hand into the jacket and probed its surface, freezing, like metal. She found a little protuberance with vicious edges and realized this must be what had cut her. So at least she knew which way it faced. Door bolts fired. She was out of time. Her fingers traced grooves, rough indentations on a smooth surface, and when her mind tried to place these together, something thickened there, and she withdrew her hand with a gasp. Nausea crashed over her. She felt herself beginning to faint, and fought it because that would be the end. Here, she told herself, I'm right here. The room filled with light. A shadow appeared, bisecting the brightness. Oh, God, said someone. The tech. She heard footsteps. She began to unwrap the jacket. Years ago, in a hidden library at the school, she had read tales of mass enthrallment, of towers and the splintering of language. Myths, she'd thought. Everything they taught her said there was no way to compromise everyone at once. The organization's words were keyed to particular psychographic segments. That was how they worked. And they did not push a p-graph flat. They did not trigger synapses. Something that could do that was not a regular word. It was a kind of word from the tales. If anything was worth flooding a building with guys in black spacesuits who couldn't hear or see except through helmets, and bearing a concrete tomb with a time-locked steel door thicker than she was, she thought that would probably be it. The man in the gray uniform rushed in, his gun drawn. The tech was just standing there, shocked. Her jacket dropped to the floor. Wood. She recognized the feel of it now. The thing was petrified wood. She pressed its back to her chest, keeping her eyes up. If she was wrong, now was when she would find out. That would be pretty hilarious. At this point, unless it was exactly what she thought, she was pretty screwed. She said, Don't move. The guard stopped. There was a silence. In it, she started to believe. Touch your nose, she said. Both of you. Their hands rose. Her spine tingled. It was one thing to understand the concept. It was another to see it. She took a breath. That was the first part. Now for the next. She said, Tell me how to get out of here. Terror lockdown. Large areas of Washington, D.C. are in lockdown this evening following what authorities have described as a significant terrorism event. Tactical police, military, and emergency biohazard response teams have flooded the downtown area, and a major search appears underway, prompting speculation that one or more terrorists remain at large. The Metropolitan Police Department is advising all D.C. residents to stay where they are and avoid all non-essential travel. The city is essentially in lockdown tonight. People will not be getting anywhere, said Chief of Police Roberta Martinez a short time ago. I ask residents to bear with us during this time of crisis. Authorities have yet to confirm whether an attack has taken place, saying only they were responding to an incident. However, unofficial sources are fearful that a chemical or biological weapon has been deployed. City workers described scenes of chaos as no special operations soldiers and armored vehicles descended on the city. They were herding everybody out, these guys with black helmets, goggles. People were screaming, said Julia Truel, 24, an office worker from IMAX. They look like astronauts. It is estimated that as many as 5,000 troops may already be on the ground in D.C., with more en route as the hunt for terrorists intensifies. More to come. D.C. lockdown compensation case stalls. D.C. Mayor Frank Valletti has, for the first time, ruled out the city compensating residents for losses incurred as a result of last month's two-day terrorism lockdown. We are very sympathetic to the residents and business owners inconvenienced, and we are doing and have done everything in our power to allow them to return to their normal lives as quickly as possible, he said at a press conference today. However, with an incident like this that affects us all, we feel DC incidents need to pull together and accept that some shared burden is inevitable. The remarks seem to signal that the fight for payouts will not be resolved outside the courts. Law firm Vignoldi and Bush, which controls the class action, could not be reached for comment. During the conference, Mayor Villetti again denied early reports that the lockdown was sparked by the use of a chemical or biological weapon. There was never any suggestion of that. What we had was forewarning of an imminent attack, and we took action to prevent it. He was unable to provide further details, referring questions to the White House. Yesterday, White House spokesperson Gary Fielding reiterated that several people had been arrested during the operation, but that no further information could yet be released. What I will say is that we had a situation and our people responded brilliantly. We should all be proud of what our people did in D.C. this month. From http://nationstates.org/pages/liberty versus-security-4011 html like the DC lockdown last year, like the gunman who went around assassinating people with military-issue sniper rifles in 2003, like the anthrax in the mail in 2006. For a week, everyone freaks out. We need more security. We need scanners. We need to take people's photograph when they enter a government building. Then a month later, everyone's calmed down, and yet we still see these incredibly intrusive new processes and technologies, which would have made zero difference to the incident that inspired them. This isn't an accident. This happens because, to people at the top, the scariest thing is how many people there are below. They need to watch us. They need to monitor what we're thinking. It's the only thing between them and a guillotine. Every time something like this happens, anytime there's death and fear and people demanding action, to them that's an opportunity. I'll be right back. It'll be a few minutes. I've gotta um I've gotta get something. Oh my god. I've made myself some soup. So it's just Brussels sprouts and a vegetable bouillon. But I've also got a hash brown that's in the toaster right now. I'll eat and then continue. I just I got really cold. I needed something very warm. So either like something really warm to drink or something really warm to eat. And this is a combination of both. So I'll be right back. It fell apart in the toaster. So that's okay, because I was able to dump it out into a plate. And then add butter to it. And then put it in the microwave. It's not really... Like, that's really the only bad thing about it. I mean, it actually doesn't... You can't really see it. It doesn't look bad. Brussels sprouts in a vegetable broth, and then hash browns. Even though the hash brown fell apart. There are some places that serve hash browns that way anyway, kind of like... Oh, I'm surprised to hear that. I really like Brussels sprouts. I think they're good anytime. I think I'll also get something hot to drink though, because I still need something warm. Yeah, so I'm going to get something else. Like now this time, just something to drink. And I'll come back. Okay, I've got two bags of green tea. Three. One coffee shop in Broken Hill didn't have a view of the quarry. I may have pronounced that wrong. It might be query. This was what Eliot had ascertained after 3 months of study, that the town offered coffee at 5 different locations, and 4 stared at the quarry. He patronized the 5th. It wasn't that the quarry was ugly, although it was deeply and thoroughly, but rather that it was everywhere. The town streets were wide, its buildings well spaced, the land as flat as any he'd seen, and this made it impossible to remain unaware of the 40-foot battlement of desiccated dirt and shattered stone that stood there like a rib cage at the town's core. He kept taking it for a wave, a great rolling crest of vomited earth about to engulf the town, which it was in a sense. Wind and erosion and the constant addition of new mullock must push it a little closer every year. Given time, it would swallow everything. This would be a serious improvement. That was another thing Elliot had ascertained while waiting here in case Wolf showed up. He sipped coffee and browsed the Barrier Daily Truth, an 18-page newspaper that came out weekly. This edition was leading with 50 Years of Happiness, a story about an elderly married couple. Elliot read it twice, searching for the part that was always missing in these kinds of articles, namely, how that was possible. He was genuinely unsure whether these idyllic unions existed or people merely pretended because the alternative was so unpalatable. Every time he thought he'd settled on the latter, he would see something like this, 50 Years of Happiness, and start to wonder. These were loose thoughts, of course. His phone rang. He folded the paper. Yes, she's here, coming down the Barrier Highway. White sedan, alone. You're sure? Got a lot of technology here, Elliot. Yes, thank you. How long? 30 minutes. Thank you. I'll take it from here. He tossed a few bills onto the table, left the coffee shop, and walked to his car. Once the engine was running, and the air conditioner moving, he made a few short calls just to confirm that everyone was where they were supposed to be. It had been 3 months since Wolf had fled Washington with a solid stolen word. Everything that needed to be in place already was, but still, when it was done, he put the car into gear and drove toward the wall of Mullock. He drove about a mile out of town and parked his car to block the road. It was symbolic. Wolf would have no trouble steering around him. The idea was that seeing him would impress upon her the futility of continuing. He climbed out and waited against the car. It was winter, supposedly. A rush of birds passed overhead, filling the air with their grating calls. Cockatoos. At dawn the noise was incredible, like the whole world was tearing apart. He was sleeping in a motel and one night woke to find an insect the size of his palm on his pillow. He didn't even know what it was. He had never seen anything like it. He felt an urge to call Bronte. He had been thinking about her again. It was this assignment. Too much time, too much waiting. It was Wolf. Watching her kick down the walls planted the thought in his head that it could be done. Call Bronte, he thought. Right. Ask how she's doing. No reason, just felt like a chat. They had been students together almost 20 years ago, attending the school that she now ran. He still remembered the bounce of her hair the day she'd come to class, the books clutched to her chest, the angle of her nose. He'd basically fallen in love with her on the spot. Well, no, that wasn't accurate. That implied a binary state, a shifting from not love to love, remaining static thereafter. And what he'd done with Bronte was fall and fall, increasingly faster the closer they drew, like planets drawn to each other's gravitational force. Doomed, he guessed, the same way. They'd held out a long time. Years? It felt like years, maybe not. They had been seniors anyway, not far from graduation. He knew this because Bronte had given him her words. A yellowed envelope, curling from use, and inside were dozens of slips of paper, each bearing a word. Use them, she said. The lights were off so they would be able to detect anyone approaching by the shadows thrown beneath her door. But he could see her face clearly enough. I want you to compromise me. He couldn't remember his own response. He might have tried to talk her out of it, might not have not. He thought a lot of things, and it was too long ago to tell the difference between choices real and imagined. Almost all of his memory was about her. The way she lay back on the bed, her bare shoulders gleaming, her face as he whispered the first words. He'd been clumsy that first time. It had taken him a while to find the place between awareness and compromise, the sublucid state of how low consciousness it laid the body open to suggestion. When he put her under too far, her face would slacken. When he brought her too close to the surface, her eyes would focus, and she would tell him to do more. He touched her breasts, and her nipples felt hard and urgent against his palm. Her hips rose from the bed. F me, she said. I want you to F me. She whimpered and growled like an animal. He worried about the noise and said, quiet, and she began to hiss, a kind of noise he hadn't heard anyone make before. Goosebumps undulated across her skin. Waves followed the touch of his fingers. Her hips rose and fell, and when he touched her there, she issued a high, barely audible keen like escaping steam. He worried he'd broken her, and brought her up. The desperation flashed across her face. She begged him to take her down again. When he did, she gave a long sigh of satisfaction, a noise of complete unself-consciousness that signaled he was very close to the core of her. He moved his hand between her legs and into the wetness he found there. In me, she said, the words becoming a chant, gasped into his ear over and over as her fingers clawed at his back, and he was unable to stop himself. He unbuttoned his pants. He entered her, and the instant he did so, her body turned to iron, a thing made of hot steel. He climaxed within moments. They lay together for hours. He knew he should leave before dawn, lest someone seeing him slinking from her room, but he couldn't bear to part with her. He held her as she gently rose toward full consciousness. They kissed. When light began to leak into the sky, he couldn't put it off any longer. He rose from the bed. She walked him to the door, her naked body in the moonlight. He would never forget that, and said, Next time I do you. A cockatoo screeched from a nearby tree. He drew breath, exhaled. This was not a time for reminiscing. He would not be calling Bronte. It was ancient history. It had ended badly, or perhaps not badly, but well. But not well. Then they had graduated and gone off different parts of the organization, and that had been that. He had no idea whether she thought about that time anymore, whether she did so with shame or regret. It was impossible to tell, impossible to ask without exposing himself. One day I'll kiss her again. The corners of his mouth twitched. One more kiss. What a thought. Ludicrous. Still, there was no harm in fantasy. Not if he recognized it as such. He would let himself keep this one, he decided. It was a nice thought to have. 2 hours later, he heard tires crawl across the dirt. A white sedan nosed around the corner. He was driving very slowly and stopped as soon as it saw him. The windshield was a solid sheet of sunlight. The engine died. The door opened. Wolf emerged. Emily. She was thinner. He said, I appreciate you stopping. She raised a hand to her eyes and turned in a circle, scanning the terrain. She was wearing a dirty t-shirt and jeans. Possibly the word was tucked into her waist, although it didn't seem like it. Had she left it in the car? Maybe she had already realized it was over. How did you cross the Pacific? He said. I asked because there's a pool going. Container ship. We searched a lot of those. You searched mine. He nodded. Fairly pointless when people can't be trusted to report when they find you. It's why they're shot on sight now." She looked at him. Her expression was very measured, very controlled. If she'd been shedding her training, it wasn't evident. "So what are we doing, Elliot? I'm sorry." Her eyebrows rose. "Oh, you're here to kill me?" He said nothing. "Well, that's disappointing. Kind of extremely disappointing coming from you. I thought you might respect it coming from me." "Yeah, you know what? Not so much. Not so much." She shook her head. "How about this, Elliot? You pretend like you never saw me. I go to Harry. Him and me disappear. End of story." She watched his face. "No, not even that? You must understand I have no choice. I love him. Do you understand that?" "Yes." "If you did, you'd know I don't have a choice either." He said, "I can give you 1 hour. You can spend that with him. Then you say goodbye and you walk back down the road. That's the best I can offer you. And I decline your crappy offer. 3 months I've spent getting here, Elliot. 3 months, and they have not been easy months. I didn't go through that for an hour." She shook her head. "I think we should be clear on the fact that you can't stop me from doing anything I want." "Where is it? In the car?" "Yeah," she said. "Do you know what it is?" "A bear word." Her head tilted. "Is that what it's called? Huh. I just know what I read in old books. They didn't have a name for it. Or rather, they had lots of different names. The only thing those stories had in common was every time a word like this turned up, it was followed by mass enslavement and death. Also towers, for some reason. You are describing a Babel event." "The word compels everyone," she said. "Everyone." "Yes. So let me ask you something, Elliot. Do you really think Yeats trusts you to bring it back? Because I only met him that one time, but it doesn't strike me as his style. It seriously doesn't. You ask me how this plays out is you make it about halfway back to Adelaide, and somebody runs you off the road. Somebody in a black suit and helmet. I will take it to Yeats," he said. "And Yeats knows that." She squinted. "You're kind of spineless, Elliot. I'm just realizing. You present as, but you're weak as P. That's a little local lexicon, if you're wondering." "Holy H. You would actually take this thing to Yeats and give it up." "That's amazing to me." He didn't respond. "F Yeats, F him. He's not here. Do something unexpected for once in your life. You and me right here. We have power. We have all the power we need." "I'm not interested in power." She sighed. "This has been a very disappointing conversation, Elliot. I'm not going to lie. I feel like I've gone past you." She began to walk back to her car. "Stop." "Or what?" He went after her and put one hand in the car door before she could open it. It was more than he'd intended, but it was her final chance and he wanted her to have it. "There are snipers. At a signal from me they will drop you. If you attempt to remove any object from your person or get back in the car or strike me, they'll drop you. They'll drop you if you try to leave Broken Hill, regardless of what I do. This is set. This is the reality you have created. The best I can do for you in this reality is to give you an hour before you die. Please take it." Her eyes searched his. "You really don't get it. The basic concept of love. Of valuing something that you feel. You have no comprehension of that at all." She shook her head. "Let me go, Elliot." So that was that. He stepped back one step, then another, leaving her isolated for the snipers. "Oh," she said. "Here we go." Her hands plucked at her t-shirt. He closed his eyes and gave the signal, spreading his arms wide. Nothing happened, no shots, no noise. He opened his eyes and she was there, arms at her side, her hands empty, just watching him. "I've been scouting this town 8 days," she said. "You and your people. You stick out like crazy here. You glow." "Vart," he said, beginning the sequence that would compromise her, and her hands moved in an odd way. He wasn't sure what she was doing, and she threw one hand toward the windshield, and it was a magician's trick, he realized. A dummy move to draw the eye, but his gaze had already shifted and the windshield was no longer obscured by the sun's reflection. On the dashboard was an object with something black twisting and crawling along its surface, and the blackness kicked him somewhere in the core in his brain, and everything went still. Something inside him revolted a long way down. "Lie down," she said. He lay in the dirt. An ant crawled across the sand in front of his eyes. You could have helped me, Elliot. I gave you that choice." Her boots appeared before him. "You chose Yeats." The words rolled by him. They evoked no reaction. He was patient, waiting for the words that would tell him what to do. "Lie still, And don't talk or move until the sun rises the day after tomorrow. After that, I don't care what you do." Her boots crunched toward the car. "You and me are done, Elliot. Next time I won't leave you alive." The door slammed. The engine turned. The car rolled away. The ant reached his nose and began so tentatively feel its way up. Elliot lay still. He breathed. He did not talk. He did not move. She drove to the homestead and killed the engine. The metal ticked as it cooled. She could see Harry's paramedic van and the garden, which had gone to crap since she'd last been here. Through the living room window, she could see the back of their sofas, the lamp and the shape of the dog, a corner of a table, small proofs of her old life. She looked at these a while, because there had been times over the past 3 months when she had wondered if they existed. She collected her satchel and climbed out into the blazing sun. She felt curiously fragile, transparent. She ascended the steps and knocked. The thing was, if Harry wasn't pleased to see her, she was in kind of a tough spot. She was kind of completely effed. He would be pleased to see her. She knew that. It just was hard to stop thinking about, since the consequences were so horrific. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She knocked again. Harry was here somewhere. She had to make sure of that. She waited. She left the front door to circle the house. The land was wide and empty of dust gyres that might signal he was out on one of the bikes. She peered in the kitchen window, but saw only plates and cups. She tried the door and the handle turned. That meant nothing. It was never locked. She went inside. "Harry?" She touched her shirt. She felt tempted to pull out the word, in case there were poets lurking around corners, behind sofas. Crazy. There were no other organization people in Broken Hill. She had watched this town for a week, but still. Harry? The living room looked like she'd left it yesterday. The sofa cushions were bowed. Harry had imprinted himself on one, and she thought she could see a hint of herself, the briefer denizen, on the other. She had been here. She had affected things. She had touched her forehead because she was having terrible trouble thinking. All her planning, and he wasn't there. She should have considered what to do about that. But he should be here. An odd thought occurred to her, that he knew she was here, and that was why she couldn't fix him, so I couldn't find him. He didn't want to see her. "Harry," she said. She wanted to explain. She had been through a lot. She hadn't talked to him in 3 months because that was the only way to keep him safe. Outside, 3 kangaroos bounded across the driveway, one after the other. The world felt uncertain. She was afraid. This was going badly, very badly indeed. She was beginning to think that after all her hoping, with the ground growing hotter beneath her feet, she might not make it to Harry after all. She heard an engine. She ran to the kitchen and saw him bouncing across the earth on a dirt bike. He went right past the window without glancing, and she didn't move because her body was staked to the floor. The tires chewed earth. He kicked the stand and came up the back steps. His eyes met hers. She opened her mouth to say hello, and he disappeared. She blinked. The back door burst open, and he came at her like a train. She raised her hands, and he crashed into her. She was enveloped by the scent of earth and motor oil. "Mother F," he said. "How are you here?" "I just am." "M!" He squeezed her until she thought she would pass out. "M, let me go." "No." She wound herself around him. "Where were you?" "Me? Where was I? Where the F was you?" Her t-shirt moved. She realized he was undressing her. Wait. "I have waited," he said, and she caved, because he was right, and so had she. He pulled her shirt over her head and threw it onto the counter. He pulled her to him by the waistband of her jeans. His mouth matched hers. His hand drove into her pants. She knew she should stop him, because they wouldn't be safe until they were 1,000 miles from here, but his fingers found her, and she forgot about that. "I missed you so much," she said. She lay in the curl of his arm, slick and sated. She played with his hair. After a while she poked him. "Harry." She scratched his chest. She wished she could do this forever, but she could not. "Harry." He opened his eyes. His lips stretched, rubbery. "I thought you were a dream. I have to tell you something kind of crazy. And then we need to leave." He sat up, smiling. "What?" "This is hard to explain." She felt the need to put on some clothes. Her satchel was on the floor somewhere. She had a vague memory of leaving it with her pants. The most powerful weapon in history, and she didn't know exactly where she'd left it. "There are people looking for me. I stole something from them." "What did you steal?" She said, "it's a word." "A word?" "Yes, but not an ordinary word." She hesitated. There are words that can persuade people. This was very persuasive. The people looking for me, they want it back. They'll kill me for it. Kill both of us. His expression hadn't changed. I wasn't supposed to come back here. I was supposed to never see you again, but I had to. That's why I stole the word. And it's taken me a long time to get here, but I made it. And I know how this sounds. You need to trust me. We need to leave. Are you high? No, no. You stole a magic word. Not actual magic, she said. I mean, yes, magic in the classical sense, but not the way you mean it. I don't know what you're talking about. Just trust me. Will you trust me? And leave? Yes. For where? It doesn't matter. I have to work this afternoon. That doesn't matter. Well, it does, he said. I'm a paramedic. Harry, she said, this thing I stole, it's probably the most valuable thing in the world. Do you get that? You're freaking out, Em. I can prove it. Just come with me. While we're safe, I'll show you how it works. Look, no one's leaving, okay? I'm happy you're home, but you need to calm down. She recoiled. Harry, I haven't seen you in almost a year. I haven't heard from you in 3 months. I was coming home. I didn't know that. If you love me, she said, trust me. He threw back the sheets. I'm going to work. She didn't want to compromise him. She never wanted to do that, reach into the essence of who he was and change it, but she had known it might be necessary and planned accordingly. Ventrich Pasval Kalimsin Manning. Get dressed and start packing. He screwed up his face. What? She blinked. Had she mixed up his segment? Surely not. She knew him completely. Ventrice Haspel Kalimsin Manning. Get dressed. You sound effing crazy. She slid off the bed, unnerved. Henry's personality was unusual. He was close to the edge of his segment. But she couldn't have misjudged him that badly. She wasn't new at this. She wasn't new to him. She ran to the hallway and found her satchel. She withdrew the bared word from it and held it waist-high. She turned and his eyes moved to it, and he grimaced. She felt further unsettled because she hadn't seen anyone react like that. Do everything I say. She didn't say ever because she loved him. He looked at her. His expression was wrong. He was not compromised. He looked like he'd never seen her before. Em, he said, I have a shift. Why don't you chill out until I get back? She had the bare wood facing the right way, didn't she? She resisted a tremendous urge to look down. Had it broken? Was it covered somehow? She ran her fingers over its grooves and nausea rose in her brain. He was there. Harry, she said. Harry, he scooped up his pants. Em, you need to get out of my way. Look at this. Do what I tell you. He pushed past her. Harry. He grabbed his work bag from the living room and headed for the front door, buttoning his shirt. She ran to cut him off and thrust out the word. His eyes flicked to it and away. Em, please, get out of the way. She lowered the word. She couldn't believe what was happening. She thought she'd planned for everything. Immune? And yet a part of her wasn't completely surprised. You knew he resisted persuasion. That was why you liked him. Em, I'm serious. Don't you love me? Em. Harry, don't you love me? If you love me, come with me. Trust me and come. His eyes shifted. The thought bubbled in her brain, breaking into awareness. He didn't love her, not like she loved him. I'm going to work, he said. She raised the word. Love me. She knew it was useless, but did it anyway. Love me. He pushed her aside. Her back hit the wall, and her breath escaped in a rush. He went down the steps, and by the time she went after him, he was climbing into the van. She ran and kept running as he shifted into reverse, thinking, what, to throw herself under it? Something. But he shifted gears, and the tires tore at the dirt, and he drove away, leaving her in the dust, naked, with her stupid, powerless word. She gathered her clothes. She found her shirt crumpled under the bed and her underpants in the sheets. She went to the bathroom and sat on the toilet and began to dress herself. She didn't know what to do, but she couldn't stay. She left the house and climbed into her car. She put the satchel with the word on the passenger seat. She put her hands on the wheel. She felt stunned in some important part of her brain, stunned as in astonner, the French root that also meant astonished, a word used to describe sorcery, as if she was acting outside of herself. She turned the key, put the car into gear. She didn't look into the rear mirror, so she wouldn't have to see the house disappear. When she reached the place where the road split, the town in one direction, everything else in the other, she turned the car in Broken Hill and drove away. A green sign went by that said Adelaide 508, and she couldn't stop shaking. She slowed down to be sure of staying on the road. She could taste loss in the back of her throat so badly that she could vomit. She couldn't believe she was driving away. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Yeats. She shrieked and braked. The car slewed off the road and enveloped in dust. There was no one. She had just imagined Yeats for a second. She began to drive again, shaken, but kept glancing in the mirror, and the feeling grew that she was forgetting something, or remembering, rather. She thought she was leaving Broken Hill in terrible danger. And Harry, too, because Yeats had planned something. She swung the car around. The tires slid in loose gravel, but then she was pointed back at the town and she felt steadier. The closer she drew, the surer she felt that she was doing the right thing. She could feel the presence of Yeats. He was coalescing. She could almost smell him in the car. Around her were moving parts of a terrible machine coming to smash Broken Hill flat. She pushed the needle and the car flew along the dirt road. She wasn't too late. She could find Harry and warn him, persuade him. She didn't know how, but she knew it could be done. The first buildings crawled around the mullock wall, and she perceived a hammer above them. A great and unspeakable force. It was falling, Yeats drinking tea. The image flashed into her mind from nowhere. Yeats with a teacup, looking at her. Fear spiked in her heart. She didn't know where that had come from. She blew through the town and left the car halfway up a curb and ran to the emergency room. Harry's paramedic van wasn't there, but she burst in anyway. The room was familiar and she felt safer. She touched her satchel for reassurance. She went to the reception desk, which was staffed by an older man with thinning hair and glasses. He'd worked there forever, although she didn't know why. He was permanently irritable. He had always made her feel as if she were bothering him. She said, "I need to find Harry." He looked down his nose. She was coming off as a little crazy. She looked like a woman who had spent months on a container ship and slept in the desert and left a man catatonic by the side of the road, and had sex and had been abandoned, was afraid of invisible hammers. "He's in the field." "Where?" He continued to eye her. "The field." He gestured non-specifically. "Miles," said a nurse, emerging from the corridor. "We're still looking for that second defib unit." The receptionist turned. Emily leaned across the counter and caught his shirt. "Excuse me," she said. "It is extremely important that I locate Harry right this second." He looked at her, and she realized this was familiar to him. Girls coming to the desk and saying, "Where's Harry? I need to see him." She was merely the latest. "Please let go of me, Emily." "No," she said. She could feel Yeats coming up behind her. "Tell me where he is." "Security," said the nurse. Emily reached inside her satchel as her fingers touched the words "cold wood." She abruptly remembered where she'd seen Yeats drinking tea. It had been in her DC apartment. She had been back a while, at least a few months, and he had come to her. That was why she never felt alone, because he had been there. He'd sat opposite her and sipped tea and told her things. At the end, before he left, he'd said, "Remember none of this until you next leave Broken Hill." A tall boy came and stood behind her, the second guard. He didn't grab her right away because they knew each other pretty well. She used to chat with him while waiting for Henry. He played football, and she couldn't concentrate on him because there were awful memories breaking free in her mind, surfacing in her consciousness like bloated corpses. "I wish to establish exactly what we've found," Yeats had told her. "There are certain forms of testing that one can really only conduct, shall we say, live." The receptionist slid a pen and paper across the counter. "Leave him a note." He did not look completely unsympathetic. Make sure he gets it." "You have to get out," she said. "You all have to get out." She could use the word. They wouldn't believe her otherwise. She could do it. Could herd this entire freaking town into the desert. The only question was whether she could save them before Yeats' hammer fell. She picked up the pen. She was surprised because she hadn't meant to do that. It didn't make any sense to leave a note now, but she started writing anyway. "You are going to perform this test for me, my dear," Yeats had said, anyway. And the first letter was K, and she suddenly realized what was coming. She tried to pull back her hand, but decided no. It was okay. She would just write this instruction first. Yeats wasn't coming. He was already here inside her. She began to scrabble and claw for the part of her mind that wasn't her, but her hand wrote "kill everyone" anyway. She took the bare word from the satchel. She managed to close her eyes. She could do that. Her left hand found the bulge, the sharp protuberance that had caught her in D.C., and her right impaled the paper upon it. There was grunting, a slap of skin. "Get him off," a woman said, and it became a choke. Footsteps. She set the barewood on the counter, the paper dangling from it. She wanted to rip it anyway, knock it over, obscure it in some way, but her mind said that was a bad idea, and she could not convince it otherwise. Someone hit her. She fell to the floor. She opened her eyes and saw a bright spot of her own blood. Her mouth was numb. Ahead, an older man with a cane rose from the waiting room seats, his eyes full of concern, but his gaze shifted to the thing above her head, and everything about his face changed. He shuffled in a half circle to face the woman beside him, whom Emily knew as Maureen. She came into Tangled Thread sometimes to buy clothes for her niece, and he brought out his cane and swung it at her so hard he overbalanced. Emily got to her feet. The receptionist had his hands around the nurse's neck. Emily took one step toward them, and the security boy shot the receptionist and then the nurse, one after the other. Emily skidded and fell. She went on hands and knees from the seats, crawling for her life. Someone shouted, "Help in the air! Code black! Code black!" And within about 2 minutes, every red-blooded male in the building would be in this room. Emily knew that was how it worked here. She wanted to scream at them to go out, but not let anybody in here, but she had no words. Finally, she fled. She crawled beneath seats, and that, as much as anything, felt like murder. By the time she reached the doors, the room was full of howls, like wolves. Then the thing, which at first seemed insignificant compared to what was happening, but she later came to understand was not. As she escaped the emergency room, Harry's white paramedic van jumped the curb. Harry stared at her through the windshield. Then his eyes shifted to the room behind her. His expression tightened, filling with purpose, and he threw open the van door. She got to her feet and backed away, her hands up, thinking he was coming to kill her, and somehow, despite what had happened earlier, he had succumbed to the word. But he ran right by her, and she realized the purpose in his eyes was his own. He was going to help. She left. She made it 2 blocks before her gut clenched so badly she had to bend over. She gagged, but nothing came out. A police car blew by, lights and sirens, heading for the ER. They would all go there. The cops, anyone trying to help the injured, it would be endless. She broke into a shuffling run. Her eye was burning. It felt like a hard prick of light in there. The thing was, when the van door had bounced open, the glass had reflected the ER for a moment. It was only a flash, but she had the terrible feeling she had gotten something in her eye. Arrogance and delusion. Discussion board 14, thread 21, post number 43, in reply to post number 39. We learn nothing from God tearing down the Tower of Babel. God didn't destroy the Tower of Babel. That's a common misconception. Genesis 11:5-8. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men were building. And the Lord said, Behold, the people are one, and have one language. Now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them across the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. This is often mistold as man trying to build a tower to heaven, which God knocks down as an object lesson in humility. But note, no destruction. B. God says nothing about the tower at all. What moves God to action is the common tongue. The story of Babel isn't about hubris, it's about language. 4. The helicopter moved through the darkness, and Yeats peered through the plexiglass at what lay below. Broken Hill was a small cluster of sulphurous lights, like a ship on an ocean of black glass. Occasionally he caught a tiny spark or glimmer, but those were the only signs that something was happening. Can't raise any of them, said a voice in his ear. He was wearing a headset, the voice belonged to Plath, sitting opposite him. Elliot, the ground team, no one. She swapped headsets and began to bark into one, and Yeats returned his attention to the landscape. A circular pinprick of lights came into view, surrounding a depthless black hole, which Yeats recognized as the main quarry. He had never seen it in person before. It was larger than he'd expected when he first took in an interest, some decades before, following hints of something ancient and significant buried there. He could still not make out he could still make out remnants of the hill that had loaned the town its name. Now that was gone, not just erased but inverted, to become this great pit. He found this notable for the demonstration of force it represented. Civilizations rose and fell. What caused them to be remembered was not their contribution to knowledge or culture, not even the size of their empires, but rather how much force they exerted upon the landscape. This was what survived them. 100 billion lives had passed without leaving a mark since the Egyptians had raised their pyramids, changing the world not figuratively but literally. Yeats admired that. This whole unbroken hill was nothing, of course, but it would outlast every person on the planet. Okay, said Plath, we've got buildings on fire now. He looked. There was indeed a flickering. I have to say, I think we're operating at a high degree of probability that Wolf has deployed the word. Plath looked at him, as if she expected a reaction here. If not an "oh God, no," then at least an "are you sure," some kind of response to validate her feeling that this was a shocking development, possibly the worst thing she could imagine. Horrible, he said. I mean, we're seeing bodies in the streets, around the hospital especially. She gazed out hopefully. Maybe it'll burn down. He considered this. It was rather important that the bare word not be lost to fire. That would be a serious inconvenience. But he was also interested in letting this scenario play out to its fullest in order to gain maximum information from it. Please don't let the hospital burn down. I'll monitor it. You know, we could send people in now, stop this before it gets worse. No, it's just there are 3,000 people down there. If Elliot couldn't stop it, it can't be stopped. Plath nodded, unconvinced. It is a great tragedy, he said. He overlooked this sometimes, the need to display empathy. They circled the town. He watched toy vehicles run down tiny figures, plow into matchbox buildings. Sometimes there was a lull and the little shapes would head for the hospital and it would begin again. I think we found Elliot, Plath said. She muttered into her other headset for a few moments. On a road a mile out of town. He's not moving. What do you want to do? Take me there, please, he said. I can send a team. Plath had been doing this lately, implying that Yeats might not know what he wanted. It concerned him a little, because it meant she didn't think he was acting rationally, and he needed her to think him rational for at least a while longer. Thank you, but no. The chopper tilted. He watched a dozen small tragedies play out below before they were obscured by a towering wall of soil and rock that marked the quarry's boundary. Dust blew around them. Plath unstrapped and pulled open the door. He hesitated because he was wearing his Ferragamos, winged patent leather, that would never be the same after contact with this land. But he had no other shoes. He stepped out. Plath pointed, mouthing words that he couldn't hear over the thundering of the blades, clawing at her hair. He begins to walk, placing his feet carefully on the treacherous sandy earth. He was tempted to abandon the whole idea now. He was upset with himself for forgetting about his shoes, but he was committed. He couldn't change his mind now without risking revealing something about himself. Plath caught up with him. She was wearing a perfectly charming pair of Louboutins, but clumping along as if they were galoshes. Plath didn't mind ruining shoes, apparently. He hadn't known that about her. It changed a great deal. They reached the road. The chopper had risen into the air, and its spotlight helpfully swung right, so he began to trudge in that direction. Plath fiddled with an earpiece. Still no sign of Wolf, she said. I assumed she's still kill on sight? Oh, yes, he said, and I expect this to be quite a lot easier to accomplish now she no longer has the word. If she no longer has it, She could be in the hospital still for all we know. Plath bent to one knee. Yeats kept walking. When Plath caught him again, her strappy heels dangled from one hand. I should not have worn these shoes. No, he said. I bet she's in there, Plath said, compromising people as they come in. Please don't assume that, he said, because that was all he needed. Wolf was nowhere near, because he had instructed her not to be. She had deployed the word and left, so that once this was all over, he could recover it. Is that, Plath said, trailing off as the spotlight shifted and made speculation unnecessary. Across the road lay a car. Before that was Elliot. Yeats couldn't tell whether he was alive or dead. She's killed him. Wolf killed Elliot. He approached to within a few feet. Elliot's coat flapped in the chopper's downdraft. Yeats studied his face. After a moment, Elliot blinked. No, Yeats said. Compromised, I believed. He felt his skin crawl. An emotional reaction. Odd, but it was unnerving to behold. Elliot, disabled. Of all the poets, if he were to select the most difficult to compromise in the field, he would choose Elliot. He had chosen Elliot. We need some people down here right away, Plath told her radio. Elliot's catatonic. In the distance, a siren wailed. It felt like a song, like the world's word calling to him. It was waiting. He need only collect it. He stood very still, studying his own reaction because there was no mistaking that he wanted it. Yeats, said Plath. His mouth felt dry, a slight tingling in his palms. He had considered many outcomes for this day, but not the possibility that he would be moved. We're going to want to move. We got emergency services inbound from 2 directions. A moment, he said. He closed his eyes. He could perceive the danger now. The crevice that had swallowed those who came before him, and he could see what needed to be done. He opened his eyes and turned to Plath. To his surprise, she was in the process of snapping a heel from her shoe. He wasn't himself. She saw something on his face. It broke, she explained. She tossed the heel into the night. Yeats heard it land. Plath began to wedge her feet back into her butchered Louboutins. Ridiculous things. When they were away from here, Yeats decided, and safely back at a hotel, he would visit Plath. He would enter her room and wake her gently and make her F her shoes. These Louboutins. It would serve a dual purpose, testing his ability to remain unaroused and teaching Plath proper respect for good footwear. I can't understand what motivated Wolf to do all this, Plath said. Men in black jogged out of the darkness and began to heft Elliot. We may never know, Yeats said. Harry ran down the main street, leaving the hospital, the emergency room, and many, many people who needed medical attention. He had tried to help. He had stayed long enough to bandage the jugular of Maud Clovis, who tried to scratch his eyes out as he worked. He had seen Yan Chu from surgery cut 3 more jugulars with a scalpel, moving methodically from one person to the next, his eyes carefully judging each attack. He had seen Jim Fowles, a 20-year-old cop, bring in a kid with a bleeding head and draw his revolver and execute the kid right there on the floor. That was when Harry decided to leave. What he was doing, stabilizing these people, that wasn't helping them. That was only delaying. He stood and Fowles turned to him. The only reason Harry had not died then, under Fowles's calm, unsmiling eyes, was that Chu chose that moment to step behind the cop and delicately draw the scalpel from left to right. Fowles gurgled, and Chu plucked the revolver from him with his long surgeon's fingers and turned it over, testing its weight. Then he had left. He ran because all he could think of was Emily. There was chaos outside, but he ran through it. He found her vomiting over the rail of a traffic bridge. He caught her by the arm and hauled her around. Her face was ashen, her pupils dilated like a junkie's. For a moment he barely recognized her. I'm sorry, she said. I did it. She wrapped her arms around her head and moaned. We have to get out of here. He was trying to think of vehicles, something off-road. If he could get back to the house, they could take the bikes. People are going crazy. It's the word, she screamed. She got to her feet and took 2 steps back toward the hospital, then veered around, clutching her head. I'm sorry, Em, he said. But he knew what she was talking about. That ridiculous piece of wood, with the black symbol that she'd waved at him back at the house like it was a magical talisman, like it could command him to obey her. He'd seen it in the ER with a piece of paper tacked to it that said, Kill everyone. At the time, it had not been the strangest thing in the room. Your word? It works? I can't stop it, he said. He won't let me. He left her and ran back toward the hospital. He was still 100 yards away when he saw the two police cruisers parked outside. People clawed and reached, spilling over the cars, filling the air with cries. Harry had intended to go in there and get that piece of wood, hack it into a million pieces, but that was clearly going to be very dangerous. He hesitated at the intersection. A car purred behind him, and his brain finally registered this as danger, and he threw himself out of his way. It blew by close enough to tug at his clothes and hit one person, then another, and crashed into one of the police cruisers. The engine revved. Harry could see the driver tugging at the shifter, trying to get the car into gear. A cop came out of the ER and jogged up to the driver and shot him through the window. He noticed a figure approaching from the side of the hospital, carrying a cleaver. Harry recognized the someone as an orderly, and the cleaver was not actually a cleaver, it just looked like it was a bone saw. Jack, Harry said, wondering how exactly he was supposed to tell the difference between a person carrying a bone saw for self-defense and one who wanted to saw him open with it, and the orderly broke into a run at him, which answered the question. Harry contemplated running, but instead opted for waiting for the orderly to get close enough to punch in the face and disarm. This was an option because the orderly was a thin teenager who played a lot of video games where Harry was not. He looked at the bone saw, but he couldn't fathom a use for it, and the orderly started to get up, so Harry punched him in the jaw hard enough to keep him down. Then he did run, because more people were emerging from the hospital's rear, nurses with whom Harry had frequently shared coffee and in one case a bed, and he did not want to face them. When he returned to the traffic bridge, Emily had vanished. He turned in a circle, cursing. He didn't know what to do. Ahead, the street looked clear. To the left, a small group wandered in his direction, one limping. To the right, not far, a woman lay motionless in the gutter. In the street lights, her hair looked yellow. She was the only thing in this landscape he could understand, so he went to her. He knelt and checked her vitals. Beth McCartney, the town librarian. Her hair was sticky with dark fluid. His fingers found a depression in her skull about the size of a tennis ball. He sat back on his haunches and exhaled. The group approached him. He recognized a local math teacher, his two daughters, and a woman who ran a little grocery store. Two teenage boys supported the limper, who was a broad-shouldered guy Harry knew as Derek Knockhouse. Harry had pumped Derek's stomach twice in the past 6 months. Both times he looked better than this. He could tell without touching him that Derek had a shattered pelvis. Thank Christ, said the schoolteacher. Harry, you have to help us. What's happening? Said the grocery store owner. She was clutching her necklace, a crucifix. Oh God, is that Beth? We have to get Derek to the hospital. Car came out of effing nowhere, said one of the teenage males. Effing took aim, then it reversed over him. Huh, said Derek. We've got to get him to the hospital, Harry. You can't take him to the hospital, he said. It's not safe. Then where? What should we do? One of the schoolteacher's daughters tried to push Derek's hair out of his eyes. Derek coughed and spat meatily. Find a place you can lay him still and barricade yourself in until this is over. Until what is over? Said the girl. He could see she was looking for a reason to give in to complete hysteria. This could be it. Until what? He plays footy, said one of Derek's friends. Harry didn't know what possible reason the kid had for volunteering this when realized he was saying it was a tragedy. Derek played football and now would probably never be the same again. It was the worst thing the kid could imagine. He's got internal bleeding, I think, said the math teacher. What do you think, Harry? Is that Beth? Yes, Harry said. She's dead. I'm sorry, Derek. But nobody can go near the hospital. They're killing people. They began to argue with him. He looked for Emily. He was becoming increasingly nervous about where she was. Police, said the girl. She broke from the group and ran down the road, waving her arms, the sleeves of her dress flapping. A cop car was sailing toward them, its lights dark, covered in dents. Over here, help! Harry called over to her, and there was a hard, flat sound, and the girl folded up and lay on the road. The cruiser continued toward them. What? Said the kid. Go, said Harry. Move, run. The girl's father, the schoolteacher, stared at her with his lips apart. In the streetlight, tiny visible hairs all over his face stood on end. Harry had seen this reaction once before, when a fellow paramedic helped him peel open a wrecked car to find her husband inside. He'd had to wrap her in a space blanket because she just froze. She literally froze, like she'd fallen into ice. It had been the strangest thing he'd ever seen. Jess, said the kid. He wasn't calling, it was a question for the group. The cop car drew closer. Run, Harry said, and shoved the schoolteacher. He pulled the other girl, the dark-haired one, by the wrist. There was another flat retort. He was tempted to see what it was. The father of possibly Derek Knockhouse, but it made no difference. The girl screamed and twisted in his grip in a way that meant it could have been either, and then he did turn and saw the cop with one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting his service revolver on the crook of his arm, his eyes moving between the road and the people he was shooting. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Alright. The grocery store woman trilled like a bird and sat heavily. The father was already spread out, his arms folded, as if he'd carefully lain down. One of the kids had fled, the other was dragging Derek, the one who'd said he plays footy, and Harry shouted at him to run, but of course the kid didn't. Harry tripped on the curb, which was a handy reminder to keep an eye on where the effigy was going, and losing his grip on the dark-haired girl. Oops. Okay. Harry tripped on the curb, which was a handy reminder. Okay. Losing his grip on the dark-haired girl, she began to walk back toward the cop car, her arms out in order to accomplish what, Harry did not know. He spat a curse and went back for her. Then he saw Emily. She was walking down the center of the road. He couldn't see her face because the streetlight was behind her. There was an appeal in her posture, which first he thought was directed at him, then realized wasn't, because she was angling toward the police cruiser. The dark-haired girl spun in half a circle. Harry ran by her falling body. He leaped onto the hood of the police cruiser, skid across, hit the tarmac on the other side. He reached Emily and threw her over his shoulder. He heard the whine of the cop's power window behind him. The closest shelter was a bakery, a squat weatherboard, much too far away. He jagged to put a degree of difficulty into it for the cop. "Put me down," said Emily. 10 feet from the bakery door, something bit his ear. The glass door shattered. He kept going and crashed through it, tripping and sprawling onto the tiled floor, feeling bullets everywhere. Losing Emily, the interior was lit by a refrigerator drinks cabinet. "Em!" He crawled toward her in the corpse light. "Emily!" He found her hand and got to his feet and hauled her up. "I want to die." "No," he said. He dragged her into the dark back room. His hip clipped a table. A stack of baking trays clattered to the ground. He found the rear door and discovered it was bolted in several ways, some of which required keys. He released Emily and shook it. He said. He abandoned the door for a smaller metallic one, with a horizontal handle like a refrigerator's. Chill air spilled around his ankles. He pulled Emily inside and closed the door, and groped in darkness for a lock. But there wasn't one, of course. You didn't put a lock on the inside of a cool room. The door didn't even open the right way. That is, in a way he could block. He gripped the handle and planted his feet and cursed. Maybe the cop wouldn't chase them. There were plenty of other targets. He listened, straining for sound. The door was so thick the cop could be right inside. He relaxed his muscles for the moment when he'd need them. There was a snuffling. Emily was crying. "Em," he said, "be quiet. I'm sorry." Quiet. She kept crying. "I did something really bad." "I know, shut up." He thought he heard something outside, but it could be anything. It was incredibly cold, too cold for a permanent hiding place. "I should have been able to stop it." The handle turned in his hands. He resisted. After a moment, the opposing force vanished. He waited in the dark. Something hit the door, hard and sharp. A bullet, then two more. He held the handle with one hand and flailed in the dark with the other, trying to push Emily down. A sizzling smell reached him. Light bled through 3 holes in the door. He hadn't thought a steel-lined refrigerator door would be bulletproof, but the confirmation was still disappointing. He found Emily's hair and yanked it. She squawked, but then he had her wrapped in one arm while he held the handle with the other, hoping the cop would please not shoot off his hand. For a while there was only their breathing. He heard the cop moving around, doing who knew what. "Does it wear off?" he said. "The word?" "No." "Why are you trying to save me?" He ignored this because it was a stupid question. Something outside went, "Quick." "I thought you didn't love me." "Quiet." He saw a flicker, only a glimmer through the holes in the door, but it was enough to recognize the cop was setting the bakery on fire. I got everything wrong." In the dark, she cried brokenly. He could see it in his mind, the cop hanging back, leaning against a door frame, gun aimed at the cool room. The second Harry popped open this door, the cop would shoot him. Maybe the fire wouldn't catch. Maybe the cop would give up and go away. Or maybe not, because it wasn't kill a bunch of people, was it? It wasn't kill as many as convenient. "There's something in my eye," Emily said. He could hear crackling. The cool room was glowing brighter. "Em, I need to open the door." She had her head in her hands. "Emily, listen to me. Wait here until I call for you. Understand? Do not move until I call your name." Was there anything out there that he could use as a cover? Something he could throw? Yes, yes, he would hurl a baking tray at the cop, and it would deflect the bullets and dazzle him with its reflection of the flames, which of course he would have to run through, and then he would disarm the cop with his superior hand-to-hand combat training. "Are you effing listening to me?" He resisted the urge to take her by the shoulders and shake her. "Please just leave me, Harry." He could feel the heat through the walls. The cop must have moved by now. Retreated to the storefront, at least. Maybe right out onto the street. The greatest danger now was waiting too long, until there was nowhere to go except into an inferno. He released the handle and pried Emily's hands from her face. For a moment he thought he really did see something in her eye, but it was only the dancing reflection of flames. "Em, you're repeating me off, but I will never leave you, ever, so stop talking. We're getting out of here." He wound his fingers into hers. "Ready?" She stared at him. "Sure you are," he said. He scooped her up. Her arms around his neck were stiff as poles. He took a breath, watching the door, the flames flickering behind it. He kissed her because, F it, he was probably about to die. Then he kicked open the door. The fire roared like a living thing, and he ran into it. She woke in a bed. No, wrong. On a stretcher. Something portable. She was in a room full of stretchers, and it smelled bad. Burned. Wait, that was her. She was singed. She put her hand to her hair, and it felt very wrong. The room was very bright. Beyond wide windows, sunlight leaped from the chrome and half a dozen muscular vehicles, Humvees and trucks and jeeps. Beyond those was endless rolling earth. She was encircled by a colorful strip of paper on which were letters and numbers and puppies and dinosaurs and elephants. The walls were lined with posters about Brazil and global warming. Beneath the windows were desks all pushed together. It was a classroom. She was burned on a stretcher in a classroom. "Oh," said a woman, "you're awake." Emily didn't know this woman, which was odd because Emily knew everyone in Broken Hill. Also, the woman was wearing fatigues like a soldier. She came closer and checked Emily's tubes. Emily had tubes. They ran from the insides of her elbows to plastic bags on a trolley beside the bed. "How do you feel?" Before she could stop her, the woman peeled up one of Emily's eyelids with her thumb. "You're in Menindee. It's a little town outside Broken Hill." A patch on her khakis said, "Neeland J. We're using the school as a hospital. Are you in pain?" Her hands were wrapped in bandages, like big, like big mittens. There were 3 other stretcher beds in the room, but none were occupied. She tried to sit up. She remembered fire, smoke, Harry carrying her through it. She had passed out. Then she had been flying, skimming across the earth and bouncing, being held by Harry on a dirt bike. She had seen kangaroos fleeing frames. Where's Harry? The man who brought you in? Yes, said Emily. Yes, yes. He's up the hall. They're working on him. Is he all right? Just relax, said Neeland. She almost asked, Are you a dog person or a cat person? Because she really wanted to know if Neeland was telling the truth. Who else? Who else what? Made it. She said, Out. She was a little freaked out by the empty stretcher beds. Neeland didn't answer. Emily felt ice in her heart, a thin sliver, like a stiletto. She put her face in her mittened hands. Her eye hurt. I'll tell them you're conscious, said Neeland. For now, rest. Once Neeland had left, Emily climbed off her stretcher. There were tubes to take care of, which she did with her teeth because her mittened hands were useless. She was in a green smock which flapped at her ankles and admitted a breeze at the back. Beneath this she suspected underpants and bandages. She felt padded. She peered out a glass panel on the classroom door and saw nobody, so she opened it. A passing soldier pointed at her and said, Get back inside, not slowing, and she said, Okay, and closed the door and waited until he was gone. The hallway floor was warm. The adjoining classrooms were empty. Farther down the hall, behind a window almost completely obscured by posters, she saw soldiers wearing face masks around a gurney. On the gurney lay someone wrapped in odd gray packages and bandages. The person's face wasn't visible, but she could see a forearm, blackened and blistered, and knew it was Harry's. She covered her mouth. One of the soldiers in face masks saw her and gestured, and Neeland turned and frowned at her. Emily went to the door and tried to open it with her elbows. Neeland pushed it open. Back to bed, Neeland said, in a low, no-nonsense voice, almost poet-like, which gave Emily a small start. Bloody H, did you remove your drip? Let me sit with him, Emily said, but without the baritone or the persuasiveness, and Neeland took her arm and marched her down the hall. Please, Emily said. But Neeland did not engage. She took Emily back to her classroom and deposited her on the bed. I want to sit with him. He'll be okay, Neeland said. Stop worrying. For some reason, this caught Emily unawares and she began to shake. She couldn't even say thank you. You love him? Yes, she said. Yes, yes. He was half dead when he made it to the perimeter. Hard to believe he kept going. He wanted to save you very much. Neeland gently forced her to recline. Rest. If anything changes, I'll let you know. She let herself be forced. Okay, everything will be fine, Neeland said. And sunlight flashed from a car outside the windows. It was a low black sedan, very different from the other vehicles, its windows tinted dark. It pulled alongside a truck and stopped. She sat up. How long have I been here? About 4 hours. I need to see Harry. The sedan's door opened and a woman in a suit emerged, pushing back her hair. Emily had seen this woman once before, years ago. Her name was Plath. Are you a dog person or a cat person? Excuse me? Dogs or cats? Which do you like more? Dogs. Neeland rose. Now sleep. What's your favorite color? Mauve, said Neeland, one hand on the door, and there was no time for further questions. Emily had spent a grand total of about 5 minutes with Neeland, and there were 20 odd segments to which she could feasibly belong, but Emily had spent time piecing together psychographics from first principles and had a strong feeling about 59. Facto brillium assog vat, she said. Come back here. Neeland swiveled in mid-step. Thank you, Emily said. Thank you, thank you. Take me to Harry. She followed Neeland back to the other classroom and approached the gurney while Neeland invented convenient excuses for why the doctors or medics or whoever these face-masked people were to leave. Neeland had said Harry would be fine, but he was swathed in layers and layers, and the only parts she could see were swollen and red. His eyes were beneath soft white circles, and she wanted these off. Wake him up, she told Neeland. Please be careful. She reached for his fingers, which were poking out from gauze, but of course her hands were encased as well. Harry, can you hear me? We're going to get out of here. Neeland finished pushing fluid into Harry's drip, and Emily set to unwrapping her mittened hands. They looked worse than she'd expected. Her fingers were cracked and blackened, the crevices between them oozing pink fluid. She took Harry's hand, and it hurt, but felt better, too. When he's awake, help me get into the car. We don't want anyone to see us. You have to get us out of here and not let anyone stop us, understand? Yes, said Neeland. He made a noise. She peeled one of the white circles from his eyes, and then the other. His eyes moved beneath the lids. "Harry, wake up!" The door opened. She turned. In the doorway stood a soldier she hadn't seen before, a young guy with a buzz cut. His eyes were focused and intent. "Oh crap," she said. "Vecto beryllium assault vat. Don't let the guy near us." The soldier ran at them, and Neeland moved to intercept. They exchanged flat, wordless blows and fell to the floor, and Neeland got him in a headlock and began to wind surgical tubing around his throat. Emily was surprised and then impressed by Neeland's. She returned her attention to Harry. He was swimming somewhere beneath consciousness like he was under glass. "Harry, please wake up. You have to wake up. I can't get you out of here by myself." Neeland and the soldier crashed into a trolley, scattering surgical equipment. The soldier got free of Neeland and his eyes fell on Emily. She abruptly saw that this wasn't going to work. Her whole escape plan. This guy was going to knock out Neeland and throttle her and Harry. Or not even that. The noise alone would bring more people than she could handle. People and soldiers and plats. She felt panic. "Kill him," she said, because maybe Neeland wasn't going full throttle. It seemed to make a difference because Neeland picked herself up and punched the soldier in the throat in a way that dropped him immediately. "Kill everyone who tries to stop us," Emily said, and something in her mind leaped, and she realized what she said. She felt undone. She felt the realization sinking into her. That she had finally done it, found a way to screw up so badly there was no way back. She had gotten a star in her eye. There were who knew how many people, dead in Broken Hill, and Utes had put instructions in her head, and she could carry them out. She couldn't believe in her core that she wasn't responsible. She had killed people, and now there was a star in her eye that wanted her to kill more. "I'm sorry," she told Harry. She began to cry, partly for herself and partly for Harry, who had tried so hard. Neeland and the soldier grunted and gasped. Emily leaned over and kissed Harry on each eye. "I love you." His eyes moved rapidly as if REM sleep. She hesitated. "Harry," she said. She saw a response, a tiny neuroelectrical spark. It reminded her of DC when she had sought out examples of psychographic segments and tested word fragments on them. Back then she had reverse-engineered entire words. Harry was immune. But maybe he was only immune to the words she knew about. Maybe he was nothing more than a slightly different kind of machine, a psychographic segment of one, which the organization hadn't targeted only because they didn't know about it. "Ko," she said. She watched his eyelids. "Ka-to." She knew him very well. She understood which movements were his. "Kick." A muscle above his lip jumped. She almost gasped. Her mind moved with possibilities, sifting conjugations. "Kick," she said again to be sure. The soldier gargled. She glanced down and saw that his face was purple. Neeland was choking the life from him. She returned her attention to Harry, ignoring everything except the 48 muscles around his eyes. She fed him sounds. She built her way to an attention word, and that was a good start, but not enough. She didn't know how much time was passing. She focused on the words. None of this was going to save her. She knew that. It was too late for her, and had been from the moment the door to the paramedic van had bounced open and reflected the bear word. But it was not too late for Harry. When she was done, she retouched his face. "Harry," she whispered. "Gat kiksu ku." He changed. She had seen people fall under compromise 100 times, but never him, and part of her died to see it, his face slack, his mind open and waiting for her instruction, his soul reduced to machinery. She could say, "Run away with me and do everything I ever tell you and love me forever," and he would. She would be loved by this thing she had made him into. "Forget all of this," she told him. "Get away from here. Forget me. Forget you ever lived in Broken Hill. Become someone else." Hivikiksu zitkuku. Forget me. She stumbled away from the gurney. She couldn't bear to look at him. Neeland was standing there like a statue, which surprised her. The buzz-cut soldier was on the floor, not moving. "Neeland," Emily said. "Thank you." Neeland waited. "Take him away," she said. "Keep him safe." Once Neeland had put Harry into a jeep and Emily had watched it speed away into the dust, she returned to the classroom in which she'd awoken and searched around for a marker. Classrooms always had markers. She found a drawer full of colorful ones and took a fistful and went looking for a bathroom. There were many people running around and shouting, but they were mostly outside, drawn by Neeland's departure. She had not seen Plath and was concerned about that because the worst thing that could happen right now was Plath finding her. She found a girls' restroom with a long counter and low sinks for children. She gripped a blue marker in her fist like a toddler and began to scrawl in the mirror. The first word was Vartix. This had left her slack-jawed in her dormitory room once, but she had been a good student and done her exercises and was not 17 anymore, so she managed to get through it, pausing between letters to blink at the ceiling and clear her mind. She completed Vartix and kept her eyes averted from it, while she wrote the second word, and the third and fourth, and then she had to gag into the sink for a while, but she had done it. She picked up the marker again, and keeping her head down, added, Die. She closed her eyes. She took 2 steps backward. She breathed. It would only work if she lowered her defenses. I am cared for, she told herself. I am safe. She felt her muscles loosen. She swallowed. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. She began to do it and squeezed them shut again. Do it, she said. Do it, you bee. You know if they find you, they'll make you tell them about Harry. Do it. You deserve it. Then she began to cry. She groped toward the counter and found the marker. She kept her eyes away from the command words and located die and added a D. Before that, she wrote Harry. Before she could change her mind, she walked away and then she looked back. She was sitting on tiles, bathroom tiles. Her mind felt bruised. She had the feeling that someone had just compromised her. Menendee, of course, Harry had brought her here. He had dragged her out of Broken Hill and saved her life, but then... Oh no, she said. Harry had died. They hadn't been able to save him. She had seen him die on the gurney. A wail burst out of her, and she forced it down because Plath was out there. The whole organization was probably looking for her. She closed her fist around her grief and made it anger. There would be time for grief later. The point here was that Harry had wanted her to live. She had to survive. She would flee and hide and live because she was good at that. Then she would find a way to return to Yeats and make her vengeance terrible. But first she got to her feet and tried to think how the H she was going to get out of here. Memo: 8th Combat Service Support Battalion, Royal Australian Army Medical Corps, SEC Unclassified, Engagement Broken Hill, New South Wales. Deployment plus 28 hours. Confirming as per request AWOL status of Medic First Class Neeland. Jennifer C. last signed on Station EO for Menindee, NSW. Minus 32.400105. 142.411669 at 060013/3. No sign of, no contact for 12 hours ongoing. Hesitant to put this one in the system as Neelan has been a model soldier with no prior signs of dissent, dissatisfaction, etc. Does not appear among any of the dead and wounded, but frankly feeling this is more likely than abandoned past. Given current state of ops around Broken Hill in general and Station EO4 in particular, recommend delaying action until we have clearer situation to report. Still highly disrupted here with orders to hold back all personnel from Broken Hill. Reports of mass casualties inside town. Possible toxicity, confused comm chain due to apparent complete loss of first entry squads, etc. Appreciate concern for process, but recommend stalling until improved sit rep. Warrant Officer Class 1 F.J. Barnes, 8 CSSB, RAAMC. Okay, I think, let's see, let me look at that. Okay, part 4 is actually the last part. So we've got about 100 pages left. Oops, let me go back. Okay, there we go. We've got about 100 pages left. I feel like it would be a good idea to stop for now and maybe come back and read the last part of his dream. I don't think that will be as long as the stream has been. Maybe like 2 hours left, I'm thinking. Something like that. Anyway, thank you for watching. I need to sleep. Good night.